I heard Allison's participating in it. I was just gonna ask her if she's seen any.
I don't know, there's so many things, it's like
Yeah,
every day. Get something else. A million texts and calls and everything else, it's crazy.
yeah. We're early stages, but I am already like busy, like just with activities, things that I gotta do.
Yeah.
Like as good as Claudia is, and she is awesome, like she does crazy business, but she has no systems in place. We have all of our contact, none of them are set up on tags, and we don't have anyone on any email campaigns.
Oh, really?
So I gotta tag them all of the contacts, and I gotta figure out campaigns or smart plans, to put them on. So I'm early stages of that, trying to figure it out.
It's
Kind of a good thing.
It's an ongoing project.
It's actually a good thing to have. I know it sounds funny, but then you get the names
Yeah.
and you internalize
Yeah.
them, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, so and so and so and so, and that's a good thing to go through.
Yeah.
I even find myself like driving sometimes and I'll see a house we sold and I'm like, are they on a campaign? And then I'll text or our daughter just grinding about, I would text her and be like, do you have so-and-so on a campaign? And she'd be like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I didn't see that, but it makes you kind of think about that. So you don't want to forget somebody and it can happen so easily.
Right.
But. That's why it's set up to, I'm gonna go to sleep. We don't want that. Not this. Oh, this is really user friendly. Oh, it's beautiful.
Melissa looks like a
Okay.
man.
That's Ron.
Oh, okay, good. I was gonna say that's it. Not Melissa.
Sorry if you heard that. Okay, I'll start. I like to have this just in case this thing goes down because that has happened before. So hello and welcome Melissa and Ron. Hello. I'm Rhonda for dinner and I'm teaching with my husband Corey today, and we are going to talk about making and receiving offers and then negotiating offers. So we usually teach these together because they go together so well. And we've been teaching for a long, long time, and this is my favorite class to teach. So I'm excited. So just out of curiosity, how many transactions have you done so far?
None.
Okay, so you've been around them.
Yeah, so
Okay,
I've actually just shadowed Claudia basically for all the time being an
Okay.
agent.
okay.
So I've had my license some of that time.
Okay.
So I've
You-
watched it.
You know things.
Yeah.
But okay, so that's good. And then Melissa and Ron, can I hear you guys? Can you guys say something?
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So I just had my license in May and I've got a couple transit.
Uh-oh.
And one on the buyer side.
Okay, you cut out real quick. So you probably said you had a couple listings and one on the buyer side?
Yeah, so I had 2 listings and 1 buyer so far.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay, that's good. And then Ron?
None yet. I just got my license last week. So.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you have the newest licensee award, if we had one.
Thank you. Yeah.
We should, but we don't, so you would have that. So what we normally do when we teach these classes is I want to go over the material so that you have all of it, of course, but then I also want to tailor it to where you're at. So we don't want to talk way above or way below where you're at. So if you have questions, please feel free to jump in there and ask, just so that we're not just running through this and it doesn't answer the questions that you may have. So you guys have been through all of this, generated leads, growing your database, getting leads. And now you have the lead. So this is the most exciting part. So this is the part that everybody should be at this class because you did all this work to get these clients, and we don't want you to, I don't want to say screw it up because there's always better ways to do things, but we also don't want you to screw it up. So we will go over things, and it's good to make this commitment now to come to the classes so you learn these things so that you're not like on the fly trying to learn from the client, right? So That's why we go over this. I'm Rhonda, by the way.
Hi, Rhonda. I'm Caitlin.
Caitlin, what's your last name?
Phillips.
Phillips. Okay, and this is Corey.
Me too.
Nice to meet you.
So. I'm gonna skip through some of these things. So. I'll try to bring some real world into this too. So obviously, every time we tell our buyers this too, every time that you write an offer, the seller can do one of three things, right? They're gonna accept it, they're gonna reject it, or they're going to counter it. So my goal every time when I write an offer is not just to throw something out there and say, oh, let's just see if they'll accept this. I try to write it so that I don't get a counter. Right? So by doing that, so let me ask you a question. What do you think is one thing I could do to try to prevent getting a counter offer? When I'm writing an offer for a buyer? Yes. Yes. Speak to the listing agent. So not just sending a text, hey, do you guys have any offers? But like talking to them. And I always ask, is there anything that I can't see on the MLS that you would like me to know about, writing before I write an offer? Because sometimes they're just like, no. But if you kind of ask it that way, ask about possession time. If the house is occupied, are your people going to need 24 hours to get out? Do they have another house to buy? Things like that. What other questions do you think that you would ask the listing agent?
I don't know if this is good or bad, but I like to ask, is there anything other than price
Yes.
that your clients want to see in an offer?
Yes. That's always a good one. Anything other, because obviously what am I going to say if a buyer's agent says, what is your seller looking for? I'm like, the most money. So when you say other than price, that gets them, yes, they need, they need to close after the first, or they need 24 hours possession, or I always use the MLS sheet for inclusions, but I like to ask if I have that listing agent on the phone, and they don't always answer the phone, but you do what you can. But I always like to ask, okay, I see the fridge, the washer and dryer are included, and I try to match my offer up to that. This changes on what the market is doing. If it's a seller's market and I'm on the buyer side, I'm very careful, right? Because I don't want to lose an offer over including a fridge. And they have 10 offers and they're like, oh, this one wants a fridge. We don't want that. I don't want to lose it. If it's a buyer's market, then I kind of am a little more aggressive. If that makes any sense, right? If a house has been sitting there for 60 days, I might ask for something that maybe isn't on the MLS sheet, just because I know they don't have any offers. But can you think of anything else? Or maybe have you run into a situation or heard of a situation with an offer where, or like a good way to write an offer without getting a counter?
You want a good earnest money, so they know that the buyer is serious.
Okay, and what do you mean by good?
One that carries a little more weight. So for an example, with just, cause I've done a couple of listings, so I've been on the seller side. When we've had multiple offers, sometimes the more the earnest money, so an example is like 1,500 versus 4,000. The seller might look at that as a stronger offer. Also, if they have down money to put down on their loan, so say someone who's only putting $10,000 down versus 120, the seller might view that also as a more solid offer.
Yes, that is true. And the one thing I will say is the earnest money, I agree with you. It's just a small piece because the buyer can get that earnest money back so easily.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
600 or 700 transactions, we've had 2 buyers lose their earnest money. That's it.
It was there.
And it was their fault because they literally, one of them, we were on the seller side actually, so it wasn't even our buyer. We took their earnest money. That never happens. But the buyer was supposed to close on Monday. On Friday, they walked out on their job. I mean, it was insane. And then the other one was
Oh,
something,
wow.
it was our buyer. So I do use that. You're right. If I get an offer and it's like $500 earnest money, I'm like, what decade are we in? We don't do 500, but at the same time, I do kind of look at it like it's a piece of it. And I like that they're willing to put that down, but I know they can wake up next week and have a bad dream and get it back. So I'm a little bit careful with that. I will tell you one time, this is the craziest thing, we had an offer, or we had a listing for about I think it was 520. And we got 12 offers, and one of them had 300,000 non-refundable earnest money upon acceptance. So I called the agent, because I wanted to give him, you know, the option to say, hey, I put an extra zero, I didn't mean that. I called him and he said, no, my people are serious, they were from out of state, they didn't even see the house. So it's a blind offer. And that's an offer when you get, you're the listing agent and you get an offer and no one ever saw the house. So I'm always leery of blind offers, because of course someone can come in and be like, oh, I liked it in pictures, but I don't like it now, and they can walk away, but 300,000 non-refundable. So I called him and he said, no, I really did mean that. And we were a good 75, maybe 80,000 above list price at this point. I mean, it was during COVID, so it was crazy. And when I contacted the other agents to let them know they didn't get the offer, and some of them were really upset. There's no way I didn't get this offer. I said 300,000 non-refundable earnest money, and they were like, oh. And then the guy wired it the next day. So that one, yes, that's insane. That one, I think even if they would have, I think they were the highest offer, but even if they weren't the highest offer, I think that's something that maybe, I would be
So
like,
not
this-
That's not refundable.
not refundable.
refundable is for sure is like a stronger offer.
Yeah, I mean, you wire that within 4 days and you just got $300,000. So that was crazy. And my people, I think this was the first house they ever sold. And Corey and I were like, this is not normal. Like, don't, because they were moving out of state. We're like, please don't do this with your next house. You don't have to do this. This is not normal. But yes, and the other thing too, you mentioned, I really like that is the amount that people are putting down. For sure, it is an indication, except in the case of a VA loan. Because the VA loan can be a great loan and they don't have to put anything down. Some do. We just had a VA buyer. It was like a $600,000 house. They put 300,000 down. It's unusual, but sometimes I get an offer from a buyer's agent that doesn't understand, and that's section 2 of the REPC, when you write the list or the offer price minus the earnest money and you fill in all those lines. She didn't fill in anything, but she verbally told me they're putting 20% down. So when I called her, and I said, hey, I just want to make sure you said they were putting 20% down. She's like, yeah, like you didn't fill in section 2. I would have no way of knowing that. And the appraiser is going to have the contract and he's going to have no way of knowing that. So yes, that is an important indication for sure. Other obvious things like a pre-approval letter. In my opinion, some of them aren't worth a whole lot. It depends on the lender who's writing them, what they looked at and what they're verifying. I've had them before when then 5 days later, they're like, oh, the buyer doesn't qualify anymore. You're like, what happened? They never qualified. So I'm a little, I still want to have it, but I don't base everything on that. And when I said too, when we write offers, we try not to get counter offers. The reason why is because if I'm the listing agent and I just got an offer that I'm going to counter, all of a sudden it's easier to look through everything else and be like, oh, let's counter on this too. We're already writing an addendum. Let's just change this and this. So I try to write it to like, let them know this is our final offer and this is what we're putting in. So try.
You tell them that.
Yeah, so this is what happened. Melissa, you mentioned this too. When you're on the listing side, you learn so much about what to do as a buyer's agent and what not to do. And you'll see offers coming in, you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that because that's a pain, or I don't like to verify, right? You just learn this. So this is probably maybe 2012, something like that. And if you guys were here then, you would know a $550,000 house back then was insane, because the most of the houses around here were 140, something like that. And we had this listing and we had it forever. And we finally, just because it was such a high price at the time, and the market wasn't that great for sellers, and we finally get an offer and it was lower than our seller would have wanted. But the way that the buyer's agent wrote the email, it was so concise. You know how sometimes they write their whole life story. I do not care. I'm not even going to read it. Just tell me the good stuff. And it was very, they've looked at other prices in the area. This is what they qualify for, blah, 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 blah. And as she wrote at the end, and as such, we do not anticipate a counter. Like, it was so powerful because it's such a whatever statement, but I read that and I was like, ooh, can't counter her because she said she doesn't anticipate a counter. But it's just the way that she presented it. It was so like final. And at the time we were in a different market. Houses sat for 6 months. So I was like, we have an offer. We need to do something with this. So anyway, you do learn things. sometimes you learn more things that you don't want to do than things you want to do. And some of them are preference. Like I've heard agents say, don't put everything in one PDF. I actually prefer them all in one PDF. That's just me. When I get an offer, I don't want somebody to miss something or, you know, whatever. It's just, some things are preference, but other things are just how they're presented. I don't specifically, like I just mentioned, prefer knowing everything about the buyer's personal life because it puts me in a weird position. I don't want to ever be accused of not presenting something properly or my sellers to be accused of something. So I'm pretty careful with things like that. I don't necessarily pass all those on. I had asked Sean about that several years ago. I said, if if a buyer includes a letter, do I have to submit it? He said, no. So ever since knowing that, that kind of made me feel like, okay, I don't have to present that.
We kind of went over it a couple times. Were you here?
Yeah,
Talk about
I
it?
think last Tuesday.
Yeah.
Did somebody have a different impression
Well,
or
they said they don't pass along
No.
any love letters
No.
at all.
no,
Yeah.
And you, I don't think they read it.
no,
Yeah, Allison
The
said you shouldn't. like,
no,
you shouldn't have
exactly,
them.
because I don't want to
Just
know.
Tell them that they had one, but
Yeah.
don't tell them what it said.
And there's been times too where, here's another thing I do. I'm glad you guys mentioned that. Here's another thing I do. On multiple offers, when I present them, I don't present the last name. I put them, if there's a bunch, if there's two, not a big deal. But if there's 12 or 15, if we ever get back to that crazy market, I put them in an Excel spreadsheet, offer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is. I put the, you know, the main points of the offer because there was a multiple offer. Actually, we've had 2 of these. Where we've had buyers come to us and say, hey, we want you to write the offer. We're like, oh, this is so like, how do you do that, right? How do you stay impartial, but get the best thing for your seller? So we kind of explained it to them like, hey, we're going to give you the best information that we can. And when we brought it to the seller, we had the numbers written down and the seller's like, well, that one's the best.
Yeah.
And that's how we went with that. So,
And
So
on the,
then, did they pick someone you were?
Yeah.
representing?
Yeah,
So
they
then
actually
you
did.
have
And then,
to
of course,
sign
we
the
told them.
joint-
yes, then of course we
Okay.
told them, okay, these people came to us. This is what's happened. We kind of told them, hey, you know, we're way above list price. You guys are gonna have to put your best foot forward. And that's kind of where we went with that.
Yeah.
But, and then we,
So-
yeah,
I was gonna say also on the earnest money, I think there is a misunderstanding by some agents. So we actually went in with an offer on a house for a client. And we were the highest offer. They told us we were the highest offer, but the other offer that they did take, it was a higher earnest money. So it would have netted more.
what,
Yeah, it would have netted more with our offer.
was it non-refundable?
No.
So that is
It's
a
just a
piece of the
misunderstanding.
puzzle.
Just
It
don't
is,
understand it. It's just a
It
dumb
is.
agent that's like.
right.
Didn't understand how to present.
Right. Cause somebody can put, I can write an offer on a $300,000 house and put 50,000 earnest money and 3 days from now, or 10 days from now, depending on how I write the offer, they wake up and they don't have to have a reason. And every state's different. I can tell you from living in Texas, it's different there. They call it an option period. The buyer will actually pay the seller for the amount of time that they had it under contract for the due diligence. Like we got a check for, I think it was like $10 a day. It wasn't a lot. We got a check for $100 from the buyer. We're like, this is weird. Like, why do we have this? They pay you for that and they have to have more of a reason to cancel. We're here.
Yeah.
I always tell my buyers, I'm like, you can wake up and have a bad dream. We don't have to tell the seller anything if
Right.
you change your mind. I try to out of, courtesy so that the seller's not wondering. There's always a reason, but yeah, it's everything just kind of adds up to pieces. And that's where, like on multiple offers too, if it goes way above list price, we don't even know if it's gonna appraise there. And that was a strategy back in COVID days. We were like, we'll put whatever we have to put and we'll deal with the appraisal later because it's what you had to do. And as a listing agent, you need to know that. If you're at 400 and somebody offers you 5 just to get it, unless they're covering that gap, it might not even appraise. So everything changes with the market though. That's why we always have to know what the market's doing. That's why it's important to follow trends, come to team meeting and things like that, because you'll learn what's happening in the market. So. Hi.
It's Melissa in person now.
Oh, you came here. Okay. I don't know how to like,
It's okay. I think I'll get.
you'll
leave,
just
and I think I'll get,
eventually, you'll eventually just,
Follow up. Yeah, I think if I just hit leave, it'll.
okay, that's fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No, that's great though. Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. So, Some of these things we're gonna go over later, that's why I'm kind of just staring.
Can I, so I have a question for you.
Yes,
So when you were talking about things to do or not do,
Yeah.
I literally just went through this. So I listed a house. We had multiple offers.
mhm,
The agent for the buyer that we ended up going with, though, he was kind of jerky, like he
Mhm.
was feeling very confident and he first, he told me, he said, this is our offer, we're not budging a penny.
that's how you present it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's like, cause the seller was only offering 2.5% commission. He's like, mine's 3%,
Mhm.
your seller's gonna have to pay it. He was just very like, just jerky.
Yeah,
And so we had multiple offers and he was ticked because he did have to budge on his price.
yeah,
So it went to 512 and then 3% or 2.5. He did come down off the commission because that's.
but he got
the-
it.
But he ended
Oh.
up getting it. But here's the thing. The next day, we have a guy that wants to pay cash. So we went under contract. Okay, list price was 509.
Okay.
This guy, like, he's like 520. I want, get out of the other contract. And I'm like, well, we can't. It's not ethical. And he's like, I'll give you another 15. So he was coming in 535 cash, okay? Well, this buyer A then, they came, we had the appraisal and nothing was wrong, but he wanted them to put a new roof on. And he's like, $8,000, or we're gonna pull.
Did
And-
you put the cash offer in backup?
Yes,
Okay, good,
yeah.
good.
So I said, well, and he goes, well, because of this, we want a new roof. And I said, well, I'm sorry, we have multiple offers and the seller's not inclined to concede at this time. He legit got mad at me, starts yelling at me on the phone.
Okay, that's what's not to do. Cause
And I
now
was
when
just
you
gonna
see his
say,
name,
because
you're
I
gonna be like,
thought, you know what, here's the thing, the seller wanted so bad to pull, and if
Yeah.
there was any
Yes.
loophole, they would have,
Yes.
and I thought this agent almost ruined it for his
Were you
buyer.
in the Ignite last week
So
with
crazy.
Sean?
Yeah,
So did you hear him talk about that?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
where you can actually just, oh yeah, I think.
yeah, I did, in
And
fact,
just
I
like-
even called Sean on,
Oh, did you?
because I was just like.
Yeah, it sounds like, just call him, offer to
Just-
buy it out, say, I'll give
yeah.
you $2,000 if we cancel the contract.
Well, and I did try and offer, I said, hey, the seller's willing to give you your earnest fee back.
Yeah,
It was like
yeah, yeah, walk.
4,000.
uh-huh,
And you got walk, the thing is I knew, because I had talked to the agent
Yeah.
and gotten the story, if you can, you get as, because you can use it as
absolutely.
negotiation. And so I knew for a fact that she had sold her house, had gone under contract, and she had nowhere
She
to
had
go.
nowhere to go.
But he was trying to use it as a power
See,
play,
it's,
and I'm like,
if I could tell you guys
you've
how many
got
times,
nothing.
and now, well, here's the thing too, the way that the agent acted, this is not what we teach in Ignite, by the way.
Yeah,
The way that he acted, unfortunately, now gives the buyers, you know, there's a
Yeah.
bad press around the buyers, and maybe the sellers. Now the sellers are gonna have a bad impression of the buyer, you know what I mean? Like, there's a
Right.
million and one things that happen. We have a couple deals going right now on new builds. Some of the agents, sometimes it's like, I don't even wanna deal with these buyers, and the buyers are fine, they're happy, they're
Yeah.
super polite, and
Yeah.
it wasn't them, it was the agent.
well,
And
and
this
I know
happened
it's the
twice.
agent, yeah.
Yeah, and I have to tell them, I'm like, let's not punish the buyers for the agent, let's figure out if it is, like, one of them was. They had an inspection done and we're not happy with the way the builder cut corners, the builder wasn't done with the house yet.
Yeah.
As we said, it's not done, it wasn't even listed, like you saw another one and then walked in this one and wanted this one, we said it's not done yet. And blah, 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 and then we got the superintendent on the phone with the buyers who were out of state, he said they were nice as could be. I walked through every item and said, well, your inspector said this, but that hasn't been code since 2021. Now your inspector, which the inspector was a builder, he was not, he said he was, or he was a builder 30 years ago, whatever. But a couple of things that were brought up and the superintendent was like, no, that's not how you do things. That's like, we haven't done that in 10 years or whatever. And the
Yeah.
buyers were like, oh, okay, we didn't understand. Okay. And they were nice as can be, but the agent could have literally punished the buyers for, like, always be nice, always kill somebody. Corey always says that, kill them with kindness, because
Yeah.
you never know who you're gonna run into again either. Cause now you're gonna see his name and you're gonna be
Right,
like,
if I were to get more, I would probably lend to
if two offers were very
Yeah.
comparable,
Yeah.
I would not go with that
Yeah,
agent.
we're
just
seeing one of
because-
his listings, like you have to show it to your buyers wanna see it,
Yeah.
but you're gonna be like, oh,
I
I don't like this one.
Yeah,
I mean, tell
So-
clients,
Yes,
this agent's
He's
really hard to work,
difficult.
and
Yeah.
it's difficult, and he's gonna
Yes.
come in at that last minute and try and renegotiate the price of the
that's
home. and-
crazy.
Yeah.
So I think presenting it like, hey, this is our final offer, you can present that in a firm but super professional and friendly way. And be like, hey,
Yeah.
this is what my clients, because sometimes it is,
Sure.
you have to know what your clients want, right? If your clients are
Sure.
willing to go up, then don't lie, but.
and the situation, like,
It's
if you have the
totally-
most expensive house in the market.
Yes,
And
things
then
like
you're
this.
throwing it, yeah, you're like, this is off.
Yeah.
But if you have multiple offers,
Yeah, and she was a genius. The way she wrote that email, I cannot, and I see her name, hi, I see her name to this day, and I'm like, she's really good.
Yeah.
She was, yeah, and there was, yeah. So you just kind of learn things like that and you just know your market and know your people and multiple offers, you just don't act like.
So I just was gonna ask your opinion, cause I'm like, maybe has that worked for him in the past, but I thought that's.
Here's
that
another
shouldn't
thing,
do
here's
that,
another
right?
thing to know. And you guys probably know this, if you're a newer agent, and it could just be newer to Utah, maybe you were an agent for 30 years in a different state, but you come to Utah. I can tell by someone's license number, I'm like, they haven't had their license for 2 seconds, because your license numbers are different.
That's what I
He could
wondered
have
if
looked
he
it up,
thought
he could have
about
looked
me.
you up,
And I was like, he probably looked at me,
And
it's
said,
like,
"Two
she's only had
houses."
it since May.
yeah,
But I was like, he doesn't know that my career
no,
was 30 years of purchasing.
No, he
That
doesn't.
negotiations is what I did for 30 years, and I thought, this isn't my, even though, yes, but I thought that.
it could be 100%, because
Okay.
people do that, and I've had other agents, it's kind of funny. I've had other agents kind of say things, slipping things in, I'm like, they looked me up, that's weird, I don't know, but they
Yeah.
go, hi,
Yeah.
how are you?
Hi.
But they do it, so like, it could be something like that, where they might have looked you up and said, oh, she's new,
Mhm.
but you don't know.
Yeah.
They could have been, I mean, we've got agents in the office that have been agents in different states and came here, and yes, their license number is this long, but you don't know. So I
Okay.
do wonder
Hmm.
about that, but I think too, the word, and I'll talk about this in a little bit too, I think the word negotiation has a very, can have a very like cutthroat feeling to it, and it
Oh.
doesn't have to. It's,
Right.
it doesn't be, so Corey taught a class here a while ago, I guess it was in team meeting. I wasn't there, on negotiation, because he was hostage negotiator and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
oh, yeah.
The most powerful thing, I don't know if he talked about this in the class or not, but I've learned this from him just from watching him, like, our kids have no chance, I'm telling you, there's no chance. Silence is your most powerful. Call a listing agent and then shut up, let them talk. Or if you're on the listing side, let the buyers, talk. Well, is there anything about your buyers that you would like me to know, before? I shouldn't be asking that. They'll tell me, yes, they sold their house, they have nowhere to go, they've written
Yeah.
5 offers, they're exhausted, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you know that.
Yeah.
Like, what a great thing to know.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of times, with sellers, I'll say kind of some things that are probably very obvious, but people have told me, oh, it's a terrible divorce situation, terrible.
Mhm.
They hate each other, they're fighting. I shouldn't know that as a buyer's agent, because now I know.
Yeah.
Don't tell people that, so I'm very careful when we do our listing agreements, listing agreements and now our buyer's agreements, we do explain to them. We don't share anything about you that is going to impact negotiation.
Mhm.
So I will share, if I have a military couple, I'll say, hey, they're new to the area, they're excited to buy a house rather than live on base. I will share that because it's letting them know, yes, they want to buy a house. They could live on base, but they want to buy a house. They're a viable buyer. I will share things like that, but otherwise I'm careful not to say anything that's going to hurt negotiation. So
Yeah.
before sharing something, just kind of ask yourself, does this help the other side? And if it does, then don't say that thing,
Yeah.
but just be quiet and listen. But yeah, sometimes Corey will call another agent and I think, is he even on the phone? He's not talking. It's just, and I only want to say something so they know you're there,
Yeah.
but the other person's just talking.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how he does it, but that's a very powerful thing. But yeah, so just remember that, quiet and listen. If you can get the listing agent on the phone, and you do what you can. I don't wait to write an offer if I can't get in touch with them. Some people don't answer their phones. There's some agents that are notorious for never answering their phone, especially Friday to Monday. There's nothing going on with them. That's their business model, but it's difficult on buyer's agents. But if you can't get in touch with them, you do what you can. So, whoops. I'll go over that a little bit later. Okay, some of this is obvious, but I'm gonna go over it anyway. When you prepare to write an offer, it seems funny, number one seems funny, but it's not. Because let's say you printed out your little MLS sheet and you showed houses on Tuesday and now it's Thursday and they say, hey, we want to write an offer on this one, and you sit down and start writing it, but they went under contract yesterday. So look in the MLS, make sure they didn't change the price before you write the offer. I've had that happen before where somebody's dropped the price 10 and the buyer's agent was going off of the MLS sheet that they printed, so they didn't know that. So make sure that. Build rapport with the listing agent. You can't do that if you're rude. So nice. I don't typically inquire about activity. I act like I don't care. That's my opinion. Because I don't want to, hey, have you had a lot of showings? When someone asks me that as a listing agent, what am I going to say?
Yeah.
Yes, we've had showings every day.
Yeah.
5 showings every day. I don't do that. I say, oh, it's been, it's been good. It's been about what we expected. That's what I say. So if you ever call me and ask me that, that's when it's. So I don't inquire about other offers on the property either. I just don't. I might say, I take that back. If it's a new listing. No, I do ask. I do say, do you have any offers in hand right now? That's what I say. The reason I said no, I don't care if they had another offer last week, 2 months ago, because guess what? I can see it in the MLS because I go through history. And if it went under contract, I see that. If it went under contract, I might say, hey, what happened with that contract? You guys went under contract 2 weeks ago, it fell out. What happened? Just so I know. Was it an inspection thing? Was it a buyer thing? I will ask that because that's important. If it was an inspection thing, I'm like, great, what was it? Did they fix it? Pretty much everything's fixable. So I asked that. I don't care about the motivations, my opinion, but I do ask about needs, just like you said. Is there anything other than price? Do they have another house? Do they have somewhere to go? And then sometimes I make a joke. Do they have somewhere to go? We don't want to make them homeless.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, yeah, they're moving in with family. Great. So number 6, I don't care because I'm going to email it to them in a PDF. Right? How else would I send it to them? I don't really know. So I don't ask that. What? Facts. I know. Good.
Sean was talking about.
What the problem did do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He actually does pre-fax and then, yeah, that was kind of the big thing.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore. Please don't do that. Yes, buyer's pre-approval. And you should really have that before you take them out to show houses. Obvious. The buyer will tell you, oh, I'm qualified to this. Make sure that you know that before you take them out. Review MLS and tax records. Yes, I do look for history. Do you guys know how to do that? Look at the MLS history for a property?
I don't.
Okay, when you're in the MLS and you're looking at MLS, whatever number, right? You're looking at the picture of the house.
Yeah.
It'll have the tax ID number and
Yeah.
it'll be in blue where you can click on the
Yeah.
tax ID. Right next to it, it'll say history.
Oh,
Click on that, it will show you everything that any agent has ever entered in about the property. So that's important to know as a listing agent, because if you go in every day and you change verbiage, it's gonna give you another line every single day. Does that make sense? So that's what that means. And reviewing tax records doesn't mean clicking the tax line on the MLS. It actually means going into the tax records, Weber County, Davis County, whatever county. Do you know how to do that?
yeah.
To double check, because, well, why do you think you'd want to do that?
When you're looking at the tax data,
Why would you, what do you
owner?
think? Yeah, yes. Because the agent may or may not, when they enter in the listing, put Mark and Jane Smith are the owners. But that might not be accurate. If you check in tax records, sometimes the agent's wrong. And this has happened to us. We've been under contract for 3 or 4 days. Because it said Mark et al, whatever. It means there's more than one name, and he had 2 names on there, so we thought we're good. And we find out from title, there's a 3rd person that never signed the contract, never signed the listing agreement. We were like, so we had contacted the agent. We're like, hey, who's so-and-so? We said the name. He's like, oh, that's their daughter. We're like, she's co-signed on the loan. Like, you need her. This is not even a valid contract. So you just never know. So always check yes for owners. And the MLS, I just review that again, just for history to see, has it been under contract 5 times and come out? Because that happens too. You're like, what happened with that one? You just want to know ahead of time. 10 is not really applicable. It is and it's not. Usually our seller's disclosure statement, you're not, or document, you're not going to receive until you're already under contract, unless the listing agent hooked it up to the MLS before they listed it. I never do that. That's just my personal opinion. I never do that. Some people do. I
what's
just don't.
your reason behind that? Just curious.
Well, a lot of times with my sellers, sometimes I'll have them fill out a seller's disclosures at the beginning, and sometimes I wait till we go under contract. It's just
Mhm. Okay.
that's just my opinion. When they're filling out all this listing paperwork and their heads are spinning, I don't wanna be like, here's a 16-page document,
just
fill
Yeah,
this out.
fill this
Yeah.
out now.
Because I want them to think about the questions, because like, I've only been in my house 6 years, but some people have been in their houses for 25 years. I can't remember everything just from 6 years. I'll be like, oh yeah, that sprinkler head, I forgot that was broken.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, they're just trying to fill it out really quick. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
But
That's-
you can decide to do it differently. And the other needed documents would be, if the house is built before 1978, you would need a lead-based paint. So the MLS changed years ago. Now you have to upload that if you upload a property, if you list a property built before 1978. Did I say born? No, built, whatever. You know what I mean? If you or the property was built before, born before 1978, but yeah, that's the only other documents I can think of that you would need with an offer. Number 9. So back when we started, we did these all the time, and we would like sit down with the buyer because the houses were on the market 6 months or whatever. So we'd be like, we did a comp and they're priced at 189 and they should be 186. I mean, we were that detailed. Now
Wow.
I'm like, literally, if it's in the ballpark and if there's gonna be multiple offers, I do a real quick one just to make sure, was this listing agent crazy? Did they list something for 400 and it should be 3? Or you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But otherwise, it kind of depends. I always do them. It just depends on how detailed I am on the buyer side. Because what happens during COVID, at the very beginning of COVID, we were like, these people are way overpriced. And then our people were 18 offers and we're like, where do we come in? They're like 17. We're like, oh, okay. And so why do that, right? It doesn't make sense, but a buyer in this market will say, hey, are we in the right ballpark? Yes, I want them to know. Yeah, they priced it at 500 and yeah, it's everything around there is around 500 so that they know. Because what you don't want to do is have a buyer in 3 months after they move in go, I think I paid too much. Why did, at least you're letting them know this is where you should be. Yes,
Yeah.
this is where it is. And the other great thing about that is if you show somebody more than one house, they're the one that picks the house, right? So if you've got somebody 500 and you're showing them 5 houses, they're like, oh, this is the best one. Then they know, like, I feel like this is good. And then with you saying it, that reinforces it. Whoops. Right, the offer, yeah. I'm just checking, seeing if there's anything like really exciting. Repair limits, we don't do that, except on the VA. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Sorry, I was just gonna say, probably when I was thinking about your stuff of like what makes your offer
Mhm.
a good solid one. A quick close if you've got.
Yeah, if
something.
you can, but sometimes sellers don't want that.
Oh, really?
because
Because they
I have to
don't
find
want
another house, or I'm gonna
So-
move in with my family, but I can't move in until the 15th, or you know what I mean? That's why we ask. But
So
yes,
if you did that, well, I guess, yeah, if you got the answer, then maybe if you have a quick close, you can
Mhm.
say, though, there is flexibility if you need more time. And so
for
then they would-
possession or
Yeah.
for, yeah, you could,
Okay,
you definitely could.
okay.
Yeah, for sure, but that's why it's really nice to talk to the listing agent, and sometimes you'll ask them and like, this has happened where we find out later the seller had nowhere to go, but the listing agent was like, yeah, anytime works, and then we're like, they don't have a house. Like that's what we mean when we ask those questions, but yes, you could do a quick closing and maybe let them stay for 7 days or, hi, 7 days or whatever, you know, you
Okay.
can work something like that out. This too, and I'll tell you when things are just kind of my opinion and when I feel like something is like law, this is my opinion. On the Repsy, when you're writing an offer, page 2, it asks for possession, and a lot of times we put upon recording or 24 hours, 72 hours, whatever it is. Our rule of thumb now is if it's over 72 hours, then we do a short-term lease agreement, just outlining. The seller still pays for utilities, seller still, whatever, we've just had a couple situations where we're like, oh, we should have one of those, so. Just something to keep in mind. Cause you think about it,
Yeah.
if you're on the buyer side and you closed on Tuesday and your seller's there till Friday, what are they doing to the house?
Yeah.
So something to think about. And sometimes we'll bring that up to the buyers and it'll be like, the house is so clean and so perfect. You're like, I'm not worried about it. True.
Okay.
But other times you go in and you're like, we should probably do something so that, because we have had people. It was a mover, they said, fell down the steps and there was like an outline of the man on the wall. And we're like, shoot, Oh, yeah. So can you guys fix that? Cause that wasn't there, but like things happen and then you're like, oh, we wanna get ahead of that. So, and that could happen. I mean, really, you could do the walkthrough on Thursday night and decide Friday morning and that could happen, but you try to do what you can do to, you know, mitigate things.
Can I ask a question about,
Yes.
so under contract, the sell, so on the bar, we're on the buyer side. Seller says, we have the shed in the backyard. We're going to move it. It's not included. But we need to leave it there for a couple extra days.
Ooh.
Yeah, so they're like, oh yeah, sure. Like, like we've never run into this before
Uh-huh.
and we figure they do it.
Right.
And then 10 days later, our client's calling us, hey, they still haven't come out to get the
You're
thing.
the buyer side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
and she's now moved in
Right.
and they still have the shed back there. They want to do stuff in their backyard where the shed is. And so,
It's a weird one.
yeah, should you say no? If it's there when we close,
Technically, unless they've
Right.
left something, whatever's on the property is
Yeah,
there, so
yeah.
that's a tough one, cause who would think they're not gonna come pick up the shed? They
Right.
wanted it.
Right.
Um.
should you say, like, we didn't know what to do in that
What do you
situation.
do? I feel, cause really it's it was on the listing agent to write something up, right?
Yeah.
Possession, shed shall be removed. I guess in the future, what I would do is say, let's just write something up, shed shall be removed by October 7th,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But I wouldn't think that you
Right.
run into that, but that's the thing about this business is,
What's the recourse after that?
I don't know, they keep the shed,
So,
they lock the gate
right,
and the
I know,
person that
right?
gets it, I
Or
don't
tear it
know.
down, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
So-
or you firewood, I have
They
no
ended
idea.
up taking the shed and there was like a side carport thing that they didn't say they were gonna take, that they ended up taking.
Oh,
And we're like,
was your buyer upset?
she's just kind of a chill person. She was like, whatever, but they like left nails out on the
Yeah, it's so
ground. and
weird.
It's like,
But this is this thing
What's weird?
about this business, if an agent ever is like, oh, I've done, 500 transactions, I know everything, you never know everything, you never know. But when you go through that, it'll stick in your head next time, and if somebody says, hey, can we keep this? You'll be like, let's write something up.
Yeah.
It'll be removed by this date, or it belongs to the buyer, or whatever, because I wouldn't have thought of
That's
that
good.
either. But those are the kind of things that you learn, and you're like, you'll just think of things, you'll be like, oh, let's do this.
Yeah.
That's a weird one. Yeah.
A small claim store is your only option. You're not gonna get.
right.
Yeah, because he had the buyer. The buyer gets the shed. Right? Cause as the buyer, you're not normally, it would be up to the listing agent to say, oh my gosh, let me write something to
Yeah.
make sure that she gets it back. They didn't do that.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know,
So I mean, it was excluded in the, thing, but yeah, they just like.
which means nothing, because
Yeah.
if they left it,
Yeah.
right? Cause we just had a seller that excluded the washer, dryer, refrigerator. She left it there. So, and we wanted it kind of as a joke. We were like, we want this in one of our rentals, but we better ask the
Yeah.
buyer if they wanted it. And of course, the buyer wanted it. We're like, we're always gonna do the right thing, but,
Don't
yeah.
always want to do it with a smile.
Yeah,
You'll do it.
yeah, we'll always do the right thing, but didn't make us think. Number 11, repair limits. We don't really do that in this state except for FHA and VEA. And it's only for appraisal required repairs. So if you're familiar with the FHA addendum, before it asks for closing costs, it'll say appraisal. I always have to explain that sometimes to listing agents because they're like, well, we're not saying we're doing 2,000 in repairs. And we're like, we're not either. We're saying if the appraiser comes back and sees that shed is falling apart in the backyard and wants it removed, that's what we're talking about. So just make sure that you're clear on that. That's appraisal required, not inspector required. But otherwise with our offers, there's other states where right when they write the offer, they include $500 repair limit and we don't do that. So everything else though, I feel like,
Is there kind of on those FHA VAs, you know, how you have the pest controller, the termite?
yes,
Is there
yes.
like, I've heard anywhere from like 500 to 2,000
it
on that. like-
depends. We were just talking about this today, actually. We're just talking about termite. In 6 or 7 transactions, 6 or 700 transactions, we've had 2. And the only time that a termite inspection is required in Utah is for a VA loan. Anybody can get one, but we've never had anybody that wants to do one unless they're VA and they have to. And I think one of them was 200.
One of them was just the shed for the. little
Yeah, what
cart
was that,
garage.
500 maybe to
House.
fix?
And one of them was actually the house, but yeah, they were very inexpensive to fix.
So it's kind of a tough one because here's the way I look at it too. Let's say you put 500 and it ends up being 700. Is the deal gonna fall apart because of that? I mean, the seller has termites, they probably didn't know it, so what seller is not gonna be like, oh my gosh, I have to fix this? I don't know, you try not to put, oh, it's a tough one, because you wanna put things when you're on the buyer side to protect your buyer, but at the same time, if I saw 2,000, I'd be like, I can't obligate my seller to pay
Yeah.
2,000. Yeah,
Yeah, that makes.
so that's a
sense.
tough one. We, like I said, we do a lot of VA with him being retired. We do a lot of VA. And that's never been an issue. I think we might have had 300 and it ended up being 500, wasn't it something like that? But the seller paid it.
It's all negotiable.
So
Yeah.
it
No
wasn't,
matter what number you put.
Yeah.
It's over that. And you've got, at that point, you're already that far into. this
That's
transaction. So
could the seller walk away? Yeah, they
they
could.
could.
Yeah,
Or they could say, I'm paying 500 and your buyer's paying 200 or whatever the difference is. They could. It's just,
For the buyer.
yeah, that's what I mean. The buyer could just kick in the difference or whatever, but we don't, not that we don't have termites, because we obviously do, but we're not a state where they're super common, so I'm not as concerned. If we were in Tennessee, Georgia, they're very common there, where you just get your house treated. I think in that case, we'd probably be having a different conversation. I think it would be normal, and people would know that. They'd be like, oh yeah, termites.
where,
Even convention.
Yeah, the other states
Like
made you get
Tennessee,
one.
you have a cap.
They made us get one.
okay.
Yeah, so that, but I think everything else on here, does anybody have any other questions on any of these items? If it's financing terms. If your buyer, you have to know what type of loan they have, right? Don't write it as a conventional, meaning don't omit the FHA VA addendum. And then tomorrow, after you're under contract, say, oh, I forgot, I need you guys to sign this addendum, because that's happened before too. Like, when I talked to the lender and they said they're actually FHA, I'm like, it's a totally different offer that you just gave me. So know that ahead of time, make sure that you have all that on there. I'll talk about dates real quick too. So on the REPC section 24, there's 4 dates, right? Your first one is your seller disclosure. And it doesn't just mean the seller disclosure form. Sometimes I'll get an offer and somebody will put tomorrow as a seller disclosure. I'm like, even if I have the form signed, that also means all your title work. So I can't tell my title people, hey, I need this in 12 hours because I have a deadline. So I usually give 3 or 4 days for that. Maybe sometimes 5. It kind of depends on what day I'm writing the offer. Due diligence depends on the market. Back when we started, somebody taught us, go down the line and go do 7, 14, 21, 30. Wasn't something like that? And that's how we wrote every single offer. Well, now I can call my inspector and be like, hey, could you guys get in really quick to do an inspection in Clinton? We'll take your next available. And they can get me in 2 days. Why am I writing a 14-day due diligence? That's not as strong of an offer for the seller. So we usually write them quicker than that. 7, 10 days. It depends on the client.
Depends on. You want to try to give them at least 2 weeks. And
Mhm. And sometimes not. If it's like a super strong house with a bunch of offers, sometimes I'll call my inspector before, oh, here's a good tip. When you're writing the offer, really popular house and you know there's multiple offers, say, hey, I've already contacted my inspector and they have us penciled in for Thursday. Because you're letting your people know you're letting this listing agent know we're full speed ahead. And then I say, we're looking at safety and structural items only. So in other words, we're not gonna go through with the 43-page report and be like, can you please fix all these?
Tighten the screw.
And we tell our buyers too, we're like, you don't want the sellers doing this if they live there with it like this. You know, or I don't want somebody's Uncle Bob fixing this. If they lived with it, they lived with it, so you fix it, or, you know, depending on what the item is, of course, but. Do you guys all have inspection companies that you feel comfortable referring? Okay.
Who do you guys use?
So we used many throughout the years, and then we used High Mountain. And the way that we got with them is we bought a rental ourselves and we used them and we did not tell them we were realtors. Because we wanted to see how they work.
Oh,
It was genius.
real. That
We're
is
geniuses. We're geniuses.
You
Finally, I
are.
couldn't stand it anymore. I was like, "Realtors." They are really good and they've got 4 or 5 inspectors, say Corey,
4 now, 5 including Corey.
5 including Corey, and they're all just as good. I mean, it's weird.
Claudia's used them
They're great.
pretty quick.
Yeah, and it's weird because you would think, I just want the same guy. I want to know what I'm getting. They're all good. They all just have different personalities, but they're all they don't scare a buyer, but they're thorough.
Okay.
And the guy that did our rental literally was like, they see everything, right? So he's pointing things out and I'm thinking, if I was a buyer, I'd be freaking out. But he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, just get a thing of cock, you're fine. Okay, so over here, and he's just showing us stuff. He was just chill. And I thought, okay, this is great. It was a flip and they put the washer and dryer, or they made a laundry room and the dryer vented to nothing. It vented to the wall,
Oh, no.
right? A buyer could have freaked out.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, they forgot, so you're just gonna wanna punch that in and the seller fixed it, of course. When we told him, he's like, are you kidding? Cause especially if it's on a flip, they paid for that. So you just tell the seller, hey, whoever you paid to install the dishwasher didn't hook up the plumbing. Whoever you paid to do this, they'll fix it. But that was kind of funny, but that's how we got with them. We've gone through several inspectors and it's just a matter of, it's not so much of what they find and what they don't find, although that's some of it. It's how they present it.
Their communications.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because if an inspector would have went in and said, I literally have no blanking idea what they did here, but your dryer, it's never gonna work, and
Yeah.
walked on, I'd be, you know what I mean? You're like, what else did they not do? But he's just like, yeah, I have no idea, but all you gotta do is do this. And
Well,
right,
and
and that's 6 years we've been with them.
being a new agent, I didn't realize, but I know now, because we had, my first ever, I was the listing agent. And
Oh,
the
that's
buyer,
unusual.
the buyer was unrepresented. So here comes this inspection report and it's like, they thought it was like a honey-do list or
Yes.
something.
And they don't
Um,
know, it's not their
And
fault, right?
right, they didn't have an agent
Mhm.
to tell them. I was so new that
How would you
anyway,
know?
it was, you know, how we worked through it, but it was just like, so that's something too that I feel as a
Yeah.
buyer's agent,
Yeah.
we have to educate our buyers that,
Yes.
look, this is not
No.
a to-do list for the seller.
No,
You're only gonna wanna point out something that's really critical.
this is what we say. This is the verbiage we
Oh,
say.
good.
When we put somebody under contract, we send them a congratulations, you're under contract email. They're not gonna remember any of this, but I send it to them so I can. So I sent it to you. But yeah, I say, congratulations, you're under contract, next steps, boom. We're gonna send you a request for earnest money. It's gonna come from the earnest app, boom. Number 2, your inspection deadline is the 10th. We recommend you order it ASAP. We're happy to order it for you. We have several inspection companies we recommend because we give more than one name. And just in case, heaven
Yes.
forbid, something happens and they're like, that was their inspector. I give them several names. They never know anybody. So
Yeah.
they say, who would you use? Which we actually did use them.
Yeah.
So, and they did several houses for us, actually. That, and then I put on there in all bold, every inspection will have numerous items. We're looking for safety and structural, and then we emphasize that in person.
I
And we
like
even
that
tell them,
verbiage.
we say, you're gonna get a page, because inspection reports are this big, right? I mean, they're,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
on a new house, we just
Yeah.
had one that was 43 pages. Ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
So,
It's not a punch list.
no, and that's the thing, but some inspectors I do feel like it's hey, someone's paying me $400 to do this, I'm going to give them their money's worth.
I'm gonna show them how good I am.
And bless you, and I think too, if they don't write something, we've had them write things like carpet needs to be stretched, and I'm like, are you kidding me? We saw that, we tripped over it, we know.
Yeah.
But I think they're covering themselves in
Mhm.
case, heaven forbid, somebody comes back and says, you didn't tell me, they're like, yes, I did. So we almost make a joke out of it. We're like, you're gonna get this, you're gonna freak out, but we're looking for safety and structural. Okay, it's an owner's manual.
I
Yes.
saw
I
this
like
owner's
that.
manual, put it into a 3-ring binder, keep it for projecting what you're gonna repair, what you're gonna fix. What we're looking for today though is safety and structural. We could find something.
Uh-huh.
I have not had any problems with our clients.
Okay.
No,
I
very
like
few,
that.
because we do it twice, right? We do it on the email, so they get the email right when they go under contract, and then we tell them in person.
Right.
So, because I cannot tell you how many deals have probably fallen apart over inspection that didn't have to. We did have a client once that decided he wanted to become an inspector, and we were talking to him, and he said, was he saying something about how if somebody asked him if he's gonna buy a house, he'd be like, hell no, I would never buy this, and I'm like, oh, not your job. I don't care if the roof is falling in and I can see the sun shining in the living room. If the seller's willing to fix it and the buyer's willing to buy it, that's what your job is, to figure out. Pretty much everything's fixable.
That's where the communication.
It really does. I mean, if a house is infested with meth, they can't buy it anyway,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, I can't really think of a circumstance where something's not fixable unless the foundation, even foundations shifting, and we've had structural engineers going over to fix it, so I,
It's like a car, you can think of anything, it's just a matter of
do you want to?
size or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, so that part of it. I can't think of anything else to talk to on that. Oh, but dates. So just keep in mind, yeah, like Corey said, we keep in mind our sellers' schedules too, or buyers' schedules too. We're like, hey, if they work opposite shifts, I might give them a couple more days because I want them to be able to be there for the walkthrough if they can. But, and then just trying to line up the closing date with what the listing agent told me on the phone, as much as I can. Yeah. I think those are pretty self-explanatory. Home warranty, what's the nice about that right now is now they're accepted again. During COVID, it's like we couldn't write any offers with anything in it, so it's nice to be able to offer that again. Also just be careful the way that you present that. There's a really good CE class on home warranties, and you would look at it and be like, why do I need a CE class on home warranties? I learned so much about that class, or so much about home warranties and how to present them. You don't say, don't worry, you have a home warranty. If something doesn't work, they'll just come out and replace it. Not necessarily true, so you don't want to say that. You just want to say this gives you extra reassurance and it's a service plan. It's kind of a good way to explain that, because the worst, not the worst thing about this job, but a not fun thing about this job is selling somebody a house and then 6 months later getting a call and they're upset because something doesn't work and you told them they were going to replace it and they're not replacing it. So just be careful how you explain that.
Nancy teaches that class.
Yeah, it's a really good class. I learned a lot with that, because I was saying that for years. It never came back to bite me, thank God, but that's what I was told. If the AC doesn't work, they fix it, they change it, they give you a brand new one. Not necessarily, there's an allowance, they give you up to this allowance, so. Anyway, I was lucky with that, that never came back, but as soon as I sat in the class and my eyes must have got huge, because he started laughing, I was like, oh, I will never say that. Okay. What are some rookie agent mistakes you can think of? On the buyer side, writing an offer, yeah,
Not filling out all of your information. on the lending.
Section 2. Yes, you talked about that. Oh, here's another thing about section 2, I just want to say really quick. If you're not sure exactly how much your buyer is going to put down, let's say it's a $500,000 house, and they're like, and you ask them, how much were you planning on putting down? They're like, I don't know, maybe 100, maybe 105, we don't care. Just put something, and I tell them, no one's gonna come back and say you did not put down exactly, but you don't want to say 100 if it's 5. So just know the ballpark of what they're putting down. That's important. Make sure your buyer understands the contract. Nobody does this. They fill it out and they send it in DocuSign, and they're like, why didn't you sign it in 30 seconds? Like, talk about it in the house. And that's what we do usually. We kind of talk about it in the house and we say, there's a lot of legalese. You're going to scroll through this and wonder what's going on. Call me. We go through kind of the main questions, I would say, because you don't want to sit there. You're going to bore a buyer to death unless we,
Knowing your buyer. Right?
how analytical
If
are they?
older, I do it first. If you've got analytical, it's really. I need to do it in person or at least.
Mhm.
But just understanding those kind of things so that buyers are, like, some people are like, yeah, where do I sign it?
Most of
Send it to
ours,
them in 5 seconds.
most of ours don't read them. I know they don't
Yeah.
read them because I send it at 8:48 and they sign at 8:49.
Call them, like, hey, I see you. We trust you. Appreciate that, but want you to don't sign.
And sometimes we'll get one where they'll be super analytical and they're apologizing. I'm like, no, thank you for reading it, because no one else reads it. I always just want to make them feel comfortable, like ask me. But we go over the main parts. We try to when we're in the house with them and say, this is what the offer is gonna look like. Sometimes we even do this by text, which sounds weird, but I might say, hey, the offer we discussed is in your email. We're coming in at 450. We're asking for 7,000 in closing. We have the refrigerator, and I go through it in a little quick text to them. Know what's essential in your area. We kind of talked about that a little bit. And when you're on the listing side, you'll see what comes in. Not that they're all right, but you'll see what comes in and you'll be like, we do this, we don't do that. The things that you want to do. standard or common terms, like I mentioned, we call it due diligence or inspection period. We don't say option period. So if anyone ever says option period, you're like, I don't even have to look them up. They're new here. And then you'll know. Everybody has different terms. Yeah, that's about all I can think of. Oh, this is not a rookie mistake, but this just kind of gave someone away a little bit. We got an offer, and remember I said I like to write offers so I don't get counters. I try to anyway. I want to get the best terms, but I don't want a counter offer with 10 things on it, so I try not to. Well, we were on the listing side, and the offer was missing section 2, didn't have anything on it, even though she told me we're gonna put 20% down or whatever it was. And then she had earnest money held at title. It bothers me, but not enough where if that's this is my opinion, but not enough where if that's the only thing, I probably wouldn't counter it. So do you guys know the difference between earnest money held at title and earnest money held in the brokerage?
I know that there's a difference and it's preferred at the brokerage,
100%.
but I don't know the
100%.
reason why.
And that's why there's an addendum for it, because they can't just change their minds and say, oh, I work for such and such brokerage, we don't do that, I'm gonna send it to title. If it goes to a title company, both parties have to sign in order to release it.
Oh, that's
Well, let's say, like, it doesn't happen often, but let's say it does, and all of a sudden the seller's like, I'm not signing that, or the buyer says, I'm not signing, whatever to release it, then what? So I'd be curious what Sean says about that. Like I said, I don't normally counter if that's the only thing. If it's a really clean offer, I'm like, I'll let them go. We're good. But if there's other things and I'm already writing a counter, I'm like, and by the way, earnest money shall be held at buyer or seller's brokerage, because technically they can bring it here. There's some brokerages by law, they have to have a trust account and they have to be able to hold it, but some brokerages don't like to do that. So they prefer their agents send it to title. They don't have to deal with it. I've had agents come here and bring earnest money to Chris just from other brokerages, because I'm like, no, you're holding it here. So if I'm writing a counter, I'm writing a counter. I'm not just countering one thing. I'm like, what else can I find? So anyway, that's just something to think about too. So that was the thing. So she didn't fill out section 2 and she just didn't realize. She's like, oh, but I put the offer amount. I'm like, yeah, but I have no idea how much you're putting down. She was like, oh, I can have him fill that out. I'm like, okay. And then I said, and your earnest money held at title. And she goes, oh, does your brokerage not prefer that? And I'm like, no, I was really nice. But I said, no, that's why there's addendum, like the contract defaults to the brokerage and the addendum is what and she's like, oh, okay. So I changed that too. Oh, I'm so sorry. There's something in the chat. Oh, okay.
I was just saying,
I am all over this. Yeah, put something in the chat and I'll see it an hour later. Oh, that's funny. I'm like, oh my gosh. Any ahas by any chance? Make your call. All of it? Okay, present the offer. We kind of talked about this a little bit. Let the listing agent know, and don't worry about bothering them. Like if you call them and say, hey, we're going to put in an offer, like, and then you send it, text them or call them. I just sent it. Did you get it? Because I cannot tell you how many offers have been sent to my spam and I never knew it. They never told us they sent it. I found it weeks later and I'm like, well, there were multiple offers. It was fine. We went under contract, but how could you never have said? Oh. And then I look terrible. Like I never responded. I'm like, your offer went to spam. So just really quick, it's simple, easy thing. Hey, just sent it. Did you get it? And then when you get an offer, respond, received it. Let them know that you have it. That's important. Seems like a simple thing, but it's surprising how many people don't do that. And then you send an offer and you're waiting. You're like, did they get it? Are we good? So. Follow instructions. That would be from the MLS is what they're talking about. So some agents in the agent remarks will say, oh, this is one of my pet peeves. Do not share an offer through Dotloop to me. Send it in PDF. Because I shouldn't have to click a link to get to the offer, right? So think about that. So some agents will put that in their marks. They're like, send, and it's in all caps. And they're like, why are they so crabby? I get it because yeah, if I was new and saw that, I'd be like, oh, they're very fussy, but I get it. You have to click on a link and sometimes it doesn't open and whatever. So if an agent says something specific, then do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll have you send it to 2 separate emails. Sometimes they'll, whatever, just look at the agent notes, make sure you have that. Label all documents clearly. Order documents logically, yes. If you're sending them all in, and you choose whatever you want. If you want to send them in one PDF, if you want to send them separately, do whatever you want. But do try to put them logically. If I got addendum 3 before, I'm like, what do they offer? So
Yeah.
try to like, give me the meat, I want to know. The email summary, this is my opinion. Keep it really short. Most agents don't care. If I get an offer and it says offer, I'm like opening it. Like what do they come in at? I don't really care about their life story, but I do like to have something in there really quick and I'll bold like, this is my people, blah, 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 blah. Offer 400, closing costs 5,000, and I try to bold it and just put everything in there. And
You tell them stuff about your clients? Not just-
slightly, just a teensy bit. Say, this is so-and-so, I've got them pre-approved with my local preferred lender, gives them 100% ready to go. That's about sometimes all I say. If they're brand new, or if they sold a house and they're buying a new one, or they have their house under contract, I put a little bit, but I'm not like, Mark and Susie have been married for 24 years, they have 3 kids,
Like
I don't care.
transactions.
Yes,
specific.
do not care, yeah. I don't care what their kids' names are, so I try to do that. But really short. In other words, like, I don't just attach a PDF and be like, hey, I sent it, you got it? I put a little something. You know what I should do for next time is just have an example of what I do, an example of the letter I sent when they're under contract, just give you an idea, and then you can take that and do what you want with it. Number 7, I don't always do. Notify the listing agent, we talked about that. Add all documents to command. I don't always do that, and I should probably do that because it's on a slide. I never really realized that. I usually wait till they're under contract and then I put them in there, but I don't put all of my offers in there that didn't get accepted. I have to ask Sean about that. Maybe they track that. But do that. Consult with your buyer. You should have consulted with them before. I don't know what that's there. That might mean, hey, I sent it. I'm not really sure. But keep your buyer informed. Maybe that's what it means. Because you remember the buyers is sitting there like, what's happening? And you might be doing all this work and they have no idea. So I usually do let them know. I sent the offer. They have until 5. Remember too, this is another thing that will give you away as a new agent. If you say our response deadline was 5, no, it's not. Your acceptance deadline is 5. I can wait 3 days to respond to you if I'm gonna counter. Technically, I wouldn't do that, but just keep that in mind. 5, whatever you put as your time is only if they accept everything. So I probably read an offer probably 3 times before I send it, because I just don't want to do something,
Oh, that's.
you know, just forget it. Sometimes I just get up and do something and come back and take a look at it. I'll be like, especially now with our commission on the Rep C, the good thing is this is all you've known, right? Pretty much. So you'll be used to it. A lot of us have never had to do that. I have sent things and like woken up at 3 in the morning and be like, did I put a commission on there? Did I just do this for free? And I did, but I'm not used to it. So I read things 3 times, and sometimes I'll even tell my buyer, hey, like I'll go over it with them and say, hey, I'm gonna read this a couple more times and then I'll send it to you, because I just sometimes just weird things you forget or whatever. Get the offer to seller in a timely manner. So what does that mean to you? Because everything's time is of the essence, but no one ever defines what that means.
Well, in my opinion, that means you need to get it to them ASAP, because especially, are you talking, you're the agent?
You're the listing
for
agent.
the- you're the
Yeah, so
listing
it says
agent.
give the
Okay.
offer to the seller in a timely manner. Oh yeah, it could be on the buyer side too, but yes, if
Yeah.
your
Okay,
buyer wants to
sorry, I
write
was
an offer. Yeah, actually, it depends on how you look at it. If I have a buyer and they say they want to write an offer, I'm not waiting 2 days, right?
Right.
I'm literally, if it's 10 at
Right.
night, I'm either
Yeah.
sitting down or I'm getting up first thing in the morning. They're not gonna lose a house because of me,
Yeah,
right? So yes,
Okay.
but I'm thinking of if you're on the listing side,
okay.
time is of the essence, right? So how long do you think would be okay to wait to give your seller an offer?
I think sometimes you have an advanced agreement, like
Yes,
we're going over the offers
Yes.
this day at this time,
yes.
so.
And if you have that, that's one thing. What if you don't have that?
I would say like within a few hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. Now, if it's 10 at night, here's what I'm not going to do, just because I learned. I'm gonna say, hey, we have an offer, I'll call you in the morning. What do you think's gonna, right? Don't do that.
Yeah.
So, I would just, call, your clients, call, text them in the morning, whatever. But a nice thing to do is during the listing agreement, just ask, or during the listing consultation, ask them, when would you like to go over? What time of day works best for you? But the other thing is you don't want to get them too excited that we're gonna get offers every single day. So you kind of have to know. Or maybe you could tell them, hey, if we get an offer and it's after 7 at night, I'm gonna call you tomorrow, the next morning, and we'll go over them. Something like that, but you don't want to hold on to it for 2 days. And I know I don't have to say that, but some people have done that. Because they're hoping something better will come in. You can't do that. So. Create an executive summary. I only do this if I have multiple offers. There's no reason.
Yeah.
Right, and the seller does not want to know, oh, okay, well, they asked for their refrigerator and they have a 14-day inspection. Like, they're like, what is the price? That's all they care. Just give them that. That's all they care about. I do sometimes call the lender. Sometimes I verify it. It just kind of depends who it is, what the offer is.
On the seller side.
Yeah, it's
I think
just
Spotty always
opinion.
calls.
Yeah, because 99% of the time, like, yeah, they're great. And then 5 days later, it falls apart. So you're like, I talked to you, but it just makes it sound good to your seller too. You're like, I actually spoke to the lender, they gave a letter and I called them. I think it doesn't hurt, right?
That's smart.
And we didn't do that for years. The first time somebody called my lender, he's like, what are they doing? Like, somebody called me, I'm like, it's a new thing. I don't know where this came from, but now we do it.
On the buyer side too, like Spotty lets our lenders know,
Yes,
this is the listing agent.
call them.
Yeah, call.
Yes,
And it
yes.
bolsters your,
We do that all the time. And another thing I do, when I present the offer, when I send it over, I CC the lender and I say, they're pre-approved with Jason, blah, blah, blah. Here's his number. Feel free to call him. I say, if you have any questions about our buyer's qualifications, I specifically put that in there. So I'm like, you're not asking any question you want. But yeah, I do that too. And it's sometimes if there's multiple offers and like listing or lenders are calling and blowing up your phone, you're like, gosh, but I get it because it's a good thing to do. It doesn't hurt. It's an easy thing. What do you think would be better, something better to do than number 7? Create the outline document in reference when you call the sellers.
I would email it to them.
Okay.
Call them.
Or try to present it in person. Because it's so easy to us to look at a contract and be like, oh, this is simple, this is the offer, but to a seller, it's like, they don't really understand what everything means. So when we can, when it's feasible, the way that our landscape is in Utah is so different, right? Because it's long and skinny and you might have a listing in Brigham City and you live in Bountiful. So it's not always feasible, but when you can, and you know your clients too. Some clients, you can just tell, you're like, I'm gonna have to sit down with them. And others are like, just send me, we don't care. So it's ideal because you can explain things like, we go over the offer, we go over the price and all of that, and then we go over the dates. And I tell them, this is their inspection date. That means up until 5 o'clock on the 10th, they can literally change their mind for no reason. They walk away, we get nothing. You have to explain that because a buyer will cancel 2 days in and they're like, well, I get their earnest money. No. So you want to explain that ahead of time. You just want to set expectations and then explain too about the finance and appraisal date. They quit their job the day before, they still get their money back. The day before finance and appraisal deadline, I mean. And then you just kind of explain all of that. And then the other thing too, is I tell the sellers, not just in Utah, but I do say the way the contracts are written, they're buyer friendly, they're buyer heavy. They're not seller heavy, right? Once the seller signs, like you had your seller that would have loved to get out of that.
Yeah.
Can't get out unless they do something and you're like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
But you can't. So I like to explain that to them. And most of these things, some of these things are super obvious, but some of them you just learn from having situations that you've gone through. And like I said, explaining to the sellers, no one ever told us explain and that the buyer can get their earnest money back, but we figured that out because they're like, why don't I get their earnest money? Oh, it's because their inspection date. So explain that. I don't do a lot of this. I'm gonna switch this. We had an assistant that did all of that stuff and then she graduated. So now it's kind of me and she still does some of it on the side. But anyway, I'm gonna skip the command stuff if that's okay for now. Okay. Oops. Okay, respond to the offer. I'm gonna skip over that because a lot of it is in negotiation, but. Is there anything? Maybe any ahas, maybe something you might do different, maybe something that you're like, oh no, I'm doing this and I'm gonna keep it because it's really good. Or anything?
I didn't think to call the lender, on the
Selling side,
selling.
it gives your
side.
seller more
Yeah. peace
confidence
of
too,
mind.
and they're like,
Mhm.
oh,
I
I
like
called them.
that.
And sometimes the lenders are, yeah, they're great. Okay,
What's that mean?
but, oh, here's an example, every letter is different, right? Some letters are like, so-and-so's qualified to 500, sign my name.
Yeah.
Other times it's like, I've done this, so sometimes, here's a good one. They're gonna put 200,000 down, right?
Mhm.
So call the lender and say, hey, have you verified their down payment funds? Like, where are they getting the 200?
Yeah.
Because if they're selling another house, they are supposed to put that on the REPSI. It's the very last little checkbox on the first page of the REPSI, but that didn't used to be there. And that's why they added that. Back when we started, people had to sell houses and you just trusted that they told you, or they turned in the right form. So you could ask for that, because I did have one time. I said, well, their grandma's selling a house and they're gonna give him the down. I'm like, well, it is contingent on a sale then. It's just not his sale. So the agent didn't know. So that's a good question to ask, but 99% of the time, the call is just gonna be very blah. They're gonna be like, yeah, we got it. But you could ask, did you look at their pay stubs? Did you look at their tax returns? If it doesn't say that on the letter. And it's the nice thing too, is a lot of the letters have come a long way in the last couple of years where they add those things on there, but they didn't used to be. Have you guys been going over this?
Not really. I'll skip past it.
Hey,
Does everyone skip past it? What are you feeling?
I mean,
First day.
in other trainings, we've gone through it. I mean, yeah, but each time we have Ignite, they don't talk about it.
It's so hard because there's just not a lot of time, because I feel like I was talking
Yeah.
fast to get through everything, but. Let's just spend 2 seconds on this. I feel like these are good things to keep in mind. If, especially these things here, even if you don't do these exact, do something every day,
Mhm.
something to keep you going.
Well, in the
You know?
bottom line, they say just talk you can fit real estate into every conversation that
Yeah.
you have.
Yeah, without being like obnoxious,
Mhm.
right? You know, you're
Yeah.
like, I don't want somebody to be like, oh my God, here she's gonna talk about the market. Like, people
Yeah.
always ask us and we're like, oh, it's good, you know, they just, yeah, and it's all in your personality too, right? But I think not being the secret agent is kind of what we say, but everyone has their own personality and their own thing. So mine is not social media. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
So I have to make myself post things, and I'll see agents that sell 5 houses a year and they are on there and they are telling everybody, and I'm like, I do not do that. It's just, I don't like it. I probably need to do a little more of it, but I also want things to fit my personality. I like to work with referrals and I pass clients and things
Well,
like
I
that.
think
Whoops.
that comes out. People know what's you and what's not.
Right.
And I think when you try and go against the grain, that's just my
It's just so
personal
much,
opinion,
right?
it just feels fake. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel genuine. And
Yeah. And another thing too, and maybe this is just me, but 90% of my feed is probably realtors, right? So I'm like, I get it, you're number one agent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have to remind myself, my clients, that's not their feed. They don't
Yeah.
have all these agents in there. So I think it's important. So not to knock on social media at all. I was just giving an example. That's not my thing. So if you're like, I hate the phones, I'm never gonna call on the phones. Okay. You don't have to, but you will get business if you do. So those types of things, right? Speaking of calling. The do not call list, we have to say this.
TCPA compliant.
Yes. We got, you know how like The Office, I don't know if you guys have got these before, but they have like a campaign for do not call and they send it to the agents. And we got one and it said from Ken, and I'm like, did we call somebody that was on the do not call? I sent him a text. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I do not know. And he's like, no, that was sent to every single agent in the office. I'm like, oh, I thought it was me.
Yeah.
I try to be careful. Well, he knows we try to be compliant. I'm like, I have no idea what happened. Whoops. But it wasn't me. Whoops. I'm kind of skipping over some of this stuff because we just don't have time. Yeah. All right. Celebrate. Okay, this is my favorite one. You can get to it. Can I not get to it? Oh, shoot, I don't know what's happening.
You're not the only one. A lot of people have problems with the clicker and that.
All right, well, negotiate. I'm just gonna keep this up here. Whenever you have an aha, just yell it out. We'll just keep that up there. Oh, do you wanna do this one?
You're doing fine.
Okey dokes. Do you guys have documents? No, but we'll go over this. That's okay.
Got like a PDF version of it.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the same as.
Yeah, I don't think it is the same, and I don't think what I have is the same either, but it's just weird that like everything was good and then it just stops at this one. And I can't get to the next one. Oh, next time I'll ask Bradley. I don't know if that's this one or
I
this
think
one.
it's the other.
Should have paid better attention. I should have paid. Okay, let's talk about the beginning of this class, which I really like, talks about, and I brought this up before, negotiation. I used to think it was like this tough, like you had to be like that agent you had, like, this is my client, this is what we're gonna do, and hang up the phone. But the best negotiators negotiate with you and you don't know that they're negotiating with you, right? You're like, oh. So we just had one, it wasn't too long ago. And the house is closed, so I can say this. When we listed it, I just didn't know if it was gonna sell. There was a couple weird things with it and I was like, this has it going against it. And we had, the first day we had like 3 offers in a row, or 3 showings right away, and nobody offered. I was like, darn it. And then all of a sudden it just picked up. And we got this offer and it wasn't the best offer in the world, but I was like, okay, we have an offer, but it was contingent on selling, but we knew our sellers were contingent on selling, right? So I was like, oh, this is not the strongest thing. And the agents were new and they really kind of negotiated hard. I don't know, but anyway, I was like, man, do we have to take this? And they were really frustrated because they put a response deadline of Friday. They came in on Thursday. I'll tell you what I'm talking about in a second. Came in, but it's being recorded. I don't want to say any names. They came in on Thursday, put a response deadline for Friday, and I was like, darn it, we lose the weekend. We accept this offer, and they were just so pushy. We need to know, we need to know, we need to know. The reason I say they're new is because this came out later. They worked for another agent on a team, different brokerage. And after we did end up closing, and I did not think it was going to happen, but they did end up selling their people's place, bought ours, and then we bought actually an agent from this brokerage's his own house is where people bought. So that was kind of cool. But anyway, their head agent had called me and said, I really prepped them to negotiate with you because I told them they're not ready. And I was like, they did so good. I'm like, they had me shaking a little bit, but he had like basically like took on, was like, okay, this is, if you're going to call Rhonda, this is what you do. Funny, they didn't call you. They called me. Because he probably knew, don't call Gory, call Rhonda. But anyway, it can be like, what's the word I want to use? Kind of urgent without being annoying. Right? Like I never want to be like, oh, I don't want to bother the listing agent. Yes, I do actually, because if I let them know my people are urgent, my people want this, I don't really care if they think I'm annoying. I'm going to make sure that I do the best thing for my client. And if I was the buyer, I would want an agent to do the same thing. So I always try to put myself in their shoes too.
If you're asking questions.
Yes. And if you set up, I talked about you sitting there and I'm like, is he even on the phone? Because you asked the question and then you shut up. And then they're telling you everything.
So you did accept the offer on Friday?
Yeah, we did, because I'm like, I don't have anything else in hand. I feel like I'm going to, because it's heating up and we have so many we have so many showings, but what if I don't? And I let these guys go, and they knew she's gonna let this go throughout the weekend and then try to get something that, like, they're, you know, I'm sure he told them, get this on Friday, don't let it go to Saturday. Yeah, so we did take it, and we looked up the house that this person had to sell. And they had only had it for 6 months. And I'm like, they're never gonna be able to sell this. And they're like, she's gonna take a loss. She's willing to take a loss to get this house. She was in a townhome and she wanted the house. So it did end up working out, but they told me that later. They were like, yeah, he told us we were not ready to call you. So we had to, well, you did really good. But anyway, yeah, he asked the questions, what other tips do you have for negotiating?
be prepared, know your product, and ask questions. But the biggest thing you can do is, and to prepare to ask questions, think of something. Right? It's not always just simple. You want to be generally open-ended. You're gonna ask some folks, you're gonna want open-ended questions on most of your things. And then, like Rhonda said, the biggest tool that a lot of people don't use is silence. Ask a question, allow that to marinate in them. You know, like it's.
It's so uncomfortable.
That's perfect. That's what you want, because they're going to fill that space 99%. The other time, it'd be rare that it'd be me on the other end that would fill the space. That's not normal. So that is one of the best things you can do, is ask good questions. Let the silence work for you, and then listen to their response. That way you're not just formulating to win the argument or get your point across. You're listening to where they're at.
That silent thing is hard, cause that's what I did with that guy who was getting mad at me. And I just gave him the answer and then I just stayed quiet and it was so hard.
Uh-huh,
It was so
it's hard to do.
And he, anyway, I was just like, I know.
Did he keep talking?
He did.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, very few people won't.
It's rare. It's very rare.
Like, are you still there?
And it's hard for me, cause I am a child.
It's hard for
I'm
Claudia
very
too.
social.
Claudia,
I'm very.
she's, if
She's
she's
like
on the phone, like,
Yeah.
it's nonstop, like, there's no pause in the conversation. I don't know what the other person's trying to say, but.
That's good though. Listen to that person. All I have to do is say, hey, are we in the ballpark? And let that go.
That's the best question. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. That is such a good question. He'll say that all the time, because for some reason, why is it that agents don't want to tell what the offers are? Why not? How many sellers are gonna say, no, don't share them? That's something we go over in the listing agreement. If we have multiple offers, can we share what the other offers are? Yeah. Why not? You're gonna drive the price up.
Yeah.
So sometimes agents will be like Corey will say, well, we're thinking of coming in at 500, we're gonna ask for 5 in closing costs. Oh, pin on that. I'll come back to closing costs in a second. We're gonna ask for 5 in closing costs, and then there's silence. He's like, are we in the ballpark? And they always answer. Always. And they should. Because why not? The pin on the closing costs, here's what I do. This is gonna sound so dumb, but I just made it up one day and I swear it works. If the lender, because the lender never tells you exactly how much closing costs, right? They're gonna say, around 6, around 7, right? When you ask for your buyer. What if you put 68.50? As a listing agent, I'm like, oh, they actually found out how much they need. I totally made that number up, but I hardly ever get counters on that.
Really?
It is the weirdest thing.
Any kind of weird number,
It is the weirdest thing.
83.
Yep.
Oh.
And they didn't need 8,300, by the way. They didn't even need that much. We just wrote that. The agent told us, or the lender told us like a couple grand less. We're like 83. So we just made it up. I mean, I've been doing that, and we told one of the guys that used to work with us. He's on his own now, and he had said that. He's like, God, hey, the thing you taught me, that really works. I'm like, no kidding. I just made it up. I have no idea what happened one day. I was like, 10,000, 98.50. And ever since then, I've been doing it. So if you ever get an offer from me, it's rarely going to be 7,000 closing. It's going to be like, this is how much we need. Sometimes it'll be more, but it will be an exact number, but we don't get very many counters on that. It's kind of interesting.
Sounds like you're specific and you know.
And they're like, oh, they must need that. And that's the other thing. When I write the offer, I might say, because a lot of people have a bad impression of VA and FHA loans, and it's not really fair, right? Because they're loans that people will still get in the house, and it's not like I'm really gonna know as I'm driving down the street, oh, that was FHA, it doesn't count. Of course it does. It's a loan, right? But people have bad opinions about them because the buyer doesn't have to put a whole lot down. So when I submit the offer, maybe my buyer does have money. Maybe the FHA was a better interest rate for them. Sometimes that happens. VA almost always is going to be a better interest rate. And I might have a buyer with a couple $100,000 to put down. But when I write for closing costs, I always say, you know, they are qualified. They do need help with closing costs. And this is how much we're asking for. They're not why would they counter with that? I just told them my buyer needs help. Do they? Yeah, we're asking for it. So. Anyway, it's just surprising how many people will submit an offer and just like. Or they'll put for closing costs, they'll put 3% or just make up a percent. I know they're not gonna use every dollar of it, so be specific. So. Okay, here's one. So other than price, we talked about this a little bit when we wrote the offer. A lot of this overlaps, but I do want to cover this a little bit more. Other than price, you had talked about, maybe a quick closing and letting the people stay. So have you guys done any lease backs yet? Short-term lease back?
Yeah,
You've done that, okay. Were you on the buyer side or the seller side?
we were on the seller side. So it was Claudia's sister.
Oh, okay.
sold her house.
Nice,
It was a guy that was gonna be out of state in Hong Kong, or out of country in Hong Kong for like a month. He's like, we wanna close fast, but we'll do a lease back with you guys.
okay.
And you can stay up to this date. And so it was written in the contract.
Did you do like the form? Do you remember okay.
I did this all.
Okay, so this is an important thing to know. There is a short-term lease back form. So if you ever have a seller, remember I was saying the 72-hour thing, that's not written anywhere. It's just kind of what our thing was. But let's say that you have somebody and they're gonna close and they're gonna let the people stay there for 7 days, 14 days, whatever. Typically, the limit is 60 for most loans. You cannot stay for more than 60. So FHA loan, VA loan, and conventional, you have to occupy the home within 60 days. So if anybody sends you a lease back agreement form for 65 days, unless they bought it as an investment property, they cannot do that. Just one thing, just tuck back there, but the way that the form is written, which I'm really glad that they redid the form a little while ago, they have it so that the seller will continue to pay all of the utilities until the buyer possesses, which makes sense, right? Because if I'm gonna close and I'm the buyer, why am I paying the seller's electricity? So that's on there. It outlines your insurance changes because the buyer's insurance is not going to cover the seller's furniture if the property burns, right? So things like that, it outlines all that. So it's just a good thing to just, I wouldn't say necessarily learn the form at this moment in time, just know that it's there. So that if you ever have a seller that wants to stay for 7 days, usually the buyer initiates the form, but the seller could write the form too, because you're protecting your seller. So just keep that in mind. And sometimes the forms, when you go look for them in the MLS, the wording does not match what you think it would, and it's so frustrating because we'll call it one thing and it's not. But I think if you searched short or
Yeah,
lease,
I
it'll come back.
Googled, or not Googled.
Like
but
in
on
the MLS?
entire- Yeah, and it just was, I think I typed in lease back
Okay,
and
it showed up.
Mhm.
Perfect. Okay, good. Just know that that's there, but that can be a term that you can use and you can put a price in there. So I can say, hey, if you guys stay a week, we'll give you $500, or you can let them stay for free. It just depends on the market. So COVID,
Depends on what side.
depends on what side you're on. Yeah. But COVID, we had people staying for free for a long time.
Wow.
You know, they were like, hey, they don't, because nobody could get their house under like if I was gonna move. Nobody's gonna take my offer when I have a house to sell when there's 12 offers on the table. So I have to sell my house first. And then I need time to buy and find a new one. So people were letting people stay for free while they did that. That happened really a lot. We don't see it a whole lot anymore, but it happens. So just know that that could be,
It's good to use. The form too, so it protects you.
yes.
Yeah.
It's an actual lease. So now they fall under the lease protections for the state.
Yeah, and you can put a security deposit in there, because if someone's gonna stay there for 30 days, what if they didn't clean for 30 days or
Yeah,
whatever, you
or
know, so.
damage.
Yeah, it's nice to do that, and the way that I do, it just says security deposit, I usually let people leave a check at title, is kind of how we've done it. But you could do other things, but those are, if we're writing an offer on the buyer side, and we're trying to be as competitive as we can be. And the seller says they need 7 days possession or whatever it is, we usually tell our people, we usually advise them, let's let them stay for free for 7 days. We're not gonna charge them. So that's just an option that you could do. Some of these things in here we don't do, so I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna say that either. They have on here furniture or household items. It's kind of a tricky one to explain because it depends on each circumstance, right? And we don't do a whole lot in Utah unless you do a lot of business in Eden. With the fully furnished homes. We
Oh.
don't do a lot of those. I've done a couple in our career, but we just don't do a lot.
So Monica, Claudia's sister.
Did she do it? The
So,
whole thing was
yeah.
furnished?
Mostly furnished.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So she was actually renting out the top part of their house and living in the bottom. They're renting out the top to like short-term renters.
Oh, okay,
And so it's
okay.
already furnished, it
Yes.
wasn't furnished they were using. And they offered to do, just a bill of sale. for-
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, yes, it's just, it's kind of, how detailed do you wanna get? Like, do you wanna go into the silverware drawer and say 7 forks and 10, it's how detailed do you wanna get? But yes, there is and the reason you wanna put it on a bill of sale is because there is no actual, for a lending purpose, there's no actual value to those items. Because the lender is not gonna lend you and say, oh, we gave them a loan for that coffee table. Yeah, so that's why that you have that.
Claudia did not do a lease back with this.
Oh, okay.
They
Well,
let them
was
stay
it?
for 21 days.
Oh, okay, which you're good. Is the 21 days over?
Yeah,
Oh, thank God.
yeah, they're.
Okay. Just keep that in mind for future. It's a good thing to have, because heaven forbid, if there's a flood, there's a fire. We did have one, we've had all sorts of things. We had one, the guy is a real estate attorney, he's our client, right? So whenever, if we ever talk to an attorney, they're like, I'll write my own deal. We're like, well, we had a real estate attorney, and we did 5 transactions with this guy. It's kind of crazy, but anyway, he was a real estate attorney, lived in North Ogden, moved to Draper. And I think we closed on a Friday.
He was out of town.
He was out of town or something like that, but we didn't get the keys right away. So it's a different, not a short-term lease back situation, but we didn't get the keys right away. By the time we got the keys, it's a huge house. The water line behind the fridge had been leaking, we don't know, 5 days. Imagine what that did to the basement. I think they had a foot of water in the basement. It's terrible. Whose fault is it? When did it happen? Who pays? I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know. I can't remember what happened. I think just, we think it was, but we can't prove it. Yeah. So always do a walkthrough. That was my point of this. Do a walkthrough. Just maybe think of short-term lease back. And then my mind goes liability. Oh my God, do a walkthrough. But that situation, I think the sellers ended up claiming it, and I think we paid half
Both
of,
the insurance companies talked
Yes.
to each other.
yeah, they figured it out.
Insurance companies figured it out, so I don't know.
But if it was a short-term lease back condition, what am I trying to say? Situation, which it wasn't, but let's say it was, that's why you want to have that form. Because imagine if something like that happened and the new buyer, the seller's like, and the new buyer's like, what in the world? Yeah, so you want it outlined, who pays for something like that. That was a weird situation. And the fact that it was a real estate attorney that it happened to, we were like, normally you'd be like, let me talk to my broker. We're like, hey client, what do you think we should do? He's not a real estate attorney. What do you suggest in this case? It was crazy, but I think it ended up working out because they were gonna redo the basement anyway. They got,
Yeah.
they ended up,
Phil was good, he was like, "Hell,
they had like 8 kids, and I was like, they've got to be so stressed.
He just,
I felt
he
so
threw
bad.
some big leads at the other side, and they were like, oh yeah, we'll give you our insurance.
Yeah, here you go. Because I think it was only like $1,000 deductible, and I think the sellers paid 500 and the buyers said, yeah, we'll kick in 500. We'll do that. So it ended up working out. Yeah,
Nice.
it worked out. But those kind of things are like, when someone tells you a situation, you're like, well, that's not gonna happen to me. You just don't know. So just,
Everything.
if there's a form, then it could happen. But anyway, those are good. Let's see, we have that, a lot of these things we talked about. So let me just skip over. They have a cute little thing in here called the 3 Ps, prepare, present, position. Kind of talked about that, haven't we, in a way? Like when you present your offer is how you position things. So let me think of an example. Let's say that you submit an offer for a buyer and they have no money, they have no down payment, or whatever down payment they have, that's all they have. They need the closing costs or it cannot work. And you offer 500, you're asking for 8,300, that's our number, 8,300 in closing. And they come back and say, we can't do that. What happens? What is something you could do?
You've got a couple of things you could counter with,
Keep countering.
yeah, keep
You
counting.
could. Yep,
Am I the buyer or the lease?
you're the buyer, you're the
I'm the
buyer's agent,
buyer's
you're the,
agent.
let's be the buyer's agent right now. Yeah, cause seller, I would do something different, but yes.
You could potentially then increase the, if
Mhm.
the purchase price.
You could. And how would you explain that to your buyer?
I would just explain it exactly as it was,
Uh-huh.
like just. hey,
Sometimes they
we-
get confused.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Okay,
They're like, well, why would I pay more for the house? Because they're giving
they're
you,
giving you the money.
but
to
you're
use
paying
towards your
for it.
closing.
It's
Yeah,
confusing, cause
yeah.
at the end of the day, you're paying for it, you're paying
Yes.
along for it, but
yeah.
yes. So, yes, that is true. I usually say this keeps money in your pocket.
Mm.
That 5,300 that you're gonna, or 8,300 that you're gonna have to find somewhere,
Find somewhere out of your pocket.
throw it into a 30-year loan or whatever. And yes, that is one thing. I'm glad you said that. And then again, you just want to make sure that house that you think the house will appraise
Yes.
to the best of your ability, because we can
Yes.
all be wrong. Never know what appraiser you're gonna get. It could be wrong. On the listing side, typically, if I get an offer and depends how long the house has been on the market, of course, and it depends on how we're priced, and it depends on if we already had that discussion that, hey, if we don't have offers within such and such days, we're gonna look at dropping. I usually explain to the seller, this is the only way, after I talk to the lender, or after I make sure, if you're talking to me, you're gonna be like, is the 8,300 real, or is this your stupid number that you made up? I'll be like, no, it's real, or whatever it is. You can ask the lender, you can be like, hey, they asked for 8,300, is there any way you can pare that down?
Oh,
Because they know how to structure things.
that's
The
true.
agent doesn't know, I don't know if they're doing their loan. So what if he says, yeah, I can actually do this and whatever. You know, because is my 8,300 really being used for closing costs, or is it being used to pay down points?
Mhm.
Like my seller might be more willing to pay that if that's the only way to get in the house, but if it's just to pay down points, maybe they're not. And try not,
Talking about position,
correct,
so you also want a position with your client. What do I mean by that? Meaning, if we're on the buying side, I wanna make sure that your client fully briefed on what could happen. Give them some what ifs. And you want them to know worst case scenario. So that when you go and accomplish
Mhm.
everything, you're comfort hero.
that's true, and it can be really quick, it can be like they can accept, counter, or reject, we might never
Yeah.
know, we might not hear anything.
Mhm.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you just wanna make sure they understand what's happening, where it's going, because we do so much. But we are terrible at telling our clients. I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Because we're moving so
Usually
fast.
the whole deal, do everything, and all they know is, you got the house.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but it makes it seem like you're, tooting your own horn when you do that, but I think if you tell them,
No, doing it in a
Yes.
way, you're just preparing, and just going to battle now, this is what it's gonna look like. Don't worry, we'll get it on the other side, that way you briefed them, you told them, this is what I'm working on. And then it comes back around to high five, we got the house.
yeah, that's true.
Positioning works on both sides.
Mhm. Here's a question too, kind of related to negotiation, maybe not, but it just popped in my brain. How do you deal with things if you have a buyer and you bring them into the house and they say, what should I offer?
Inside the house?
Or anywhere,
Or
maybe
just
not inside the
anywhere.
house because of
Okay.
cameras,
I
but
didn't know if this was a trick
no,
question.
that wasn't. That's a good point. Remember, you're always being watched. Corey literally like walk in there like talking, he's like, oh,
Yeah.
and we go outside, even on the garage, he's like, they're on the garage, like, stop talking.
Yeah.
That's how poker face until we get back up. to- Then they all know.
Yeah.
And they'll point them out.
But I think, yeah, like, how do you, or have you been in that situation? And if you haven't, I'll tell you what we do, but what do you think would be a good conversation to have with them?
And the
What should I
question,
pay?
remind me.
What should I
What
pay?
should I pay?
Even if it's multiple offers, even if it's not multiple offers, what should I offer? What do you say? Or what do you
Well,
think?
hopefully I've done my homework and we've comped it, and we understand what the market value would
Mhm.
be. I think even just being new and seeing the homes, we know is the home that we looked at, how popular
Yes.
is it? What condition, is it gonna?
How does
stay
it
on
compare to
market
the other
long?
ones? Yeah,
Yes.
you know that, yeah.
Yeah. And, based on those assessments, you're like, okay, they're gonna get top dollar for
Mhm.
this. If I call the listing agent and he has multiple offers,
Right.
then I let the buyers know, hey, we need to be competitive.
Yep. What if they say, what does that mean?
Um. It's a good question because you don't know the number.
No, I have
right?
no idea.
Like, we have no idea what's gonna be.
Listing agents is not telling us anything.
So
Like,
you can give them a range because we can't tell them.
no, but here's what I do. Trying to get
Okay.
you there, but I don't know.
I
if
know,
I
I'm
don't know if
like-
I can get you there. This is what we say. We say, we can't tell you because I have no idea what could come in. Somebody could roll up, how do you say it? Somebody could roll up, back a truck in with a bag of cash. I don't know what he says.
Okay.
Which I did. Yeah, and it could happen because you've seen it happen. Here's what I say. I say, we cannot tell you because I don't know what's gonna come in. All I can tell you is give us a number where if you don't get it and you find out you missed it by 1,000, you are okay with that and only you know that number. I will not tell them a number. Because if I tell them, unless the listing agent says, if you come in at 510, you've got it. Then I tell them, hey, this is what I was told.
Yeah,
But-
I was gonna say, if you gather intel.
That's
from a
different.
Listing agent, then that's a
Yeah.
different.
That's
story,
different.
right?
And
It's
if the
just
listing agent's like, I'm not telling you.
That's really tough to,
Yeah.
unless, the only time that we do that is if it's a returning client, bunch of people. That's a different kind of conversation.
Yeah,
But a new client or a first time.
I tell them, I do not
Yeah.
tell them.
It's
I
really
say, I
tough.
can't tell you the number,
Yeah.
but if you find out you missed it by 1,000, are you okay with it? And then they're like, okay. And then we tell them, I have no idea what that number is for you. Because if it's a $500,000 house, somebody might walk in and say, I'll give you 600. Most people wouldn't.
Mhm.
But what if there was one person that would? So that's what we say. And I'll tell you how we got an offer one time and we were the listing agent and we represented a buyer. We didn't even tell them the price. That's exactly what we told him. We said, whatever number you can come in at, that where you can feel good. And he came in at some weird number. And then they get it by like $130. And we're like, are you kidding me? Because none of these buyers agents are gonna believe that we did not coach him. We did not coach him because I literally was like, this is what we're telling everybody else and whatever. It was weird. Also, are you familiar with escalation clauses? What they are
Yes.
and how to use them?
They are scary.
They're
Sean,
extremely scary. What can happen with them?
transaction.
They're never
Oh,
They're never written
It
right.
was
We
horrible.
use them and we're like, oh, this did this
I
and this
got
did this
three.
and.
I had 4
No.
offers, 3 with escalations. It was a nightmare.
No.
And I've learned, don't ever do that.
Well, try with 12 offers and everybody writes
Oh.
one and they write them wrong and we're like, this
And
is
we'll
a
go
perpetual.
1,000
It'll go
over the take one and you just keep
with
on.
no limit.
Listing. Tell.
You could.
I don't-
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cause you can explain it to your seller. You have to
Yeah.
explain it to your seller. And if you're selling, if you explain it to the seller, like, hey, they're not even. I can explain it really well on the buyer side where they want to use one and I can explain it really well on the seller side where they don't want one, right? It
Yeah.
depends on what I want. But to the seller, I'm like, they're not even coming in with their highest and best. They're just saying. They'll beat it and then they could walk away tomorrow because they didn't know it was gonna be that number. They thought it was gonna be 505 and now we're at 530. They can walk away
Mm.
So
because they didn't.
we got 2 offers yesterday, both with escalation clauses, both for the same.
1,000 over the
price.
next or whatever.
One was offering 3,000 above, one was asking 5,000, or offering 5,000 above, the
Oh,
highest
That's
offer.
those are good.
Escalation. clause.
No, so
Oh,
that high above, up
per
to,
jump. Got
Yeah.
it.
up to the.
I was gonna say, dang, that's
No,
crazy.
no, it was, they were both a significant amount more than
that's great.
the asking price, but. Like, how do you even?
It's tough.
It depends on how it's written. So as a listing agent. You can really take advantage of some of them because they write them wrong, where you can
I'm
take two
flip flop all day long.
and have them go, like, you can just literally.
They
go
beat
in
them, they beat
off.
them, they beat them.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, and I was thinking that.
I don't like them.
Depends on how it was written.
We just accepted one of the 2 offers at the offer price,
Uh-huh,
the one that netted like slightly more.
yeah.
One of the agents came in and offered a lower buyer
Ugh.
commission. And so that was like an extra $5,000.
What you could do with that, is you only had 2.
Yeah.
Is you could go back to them
Yeah.
and say.
Just highest and
You
best.
want your highest and best, no escalations.
Yes.
And see what you got. And then you know, because they're gonna go up. from
Yeah,
where they're rated.
right.
So then you could get
Mhm.
something that you would have a solid offer. to.
Cause I like them and I don't like them. I'm really torn on
So,
it.
well, so this was a house 2 doors down from where Claudia grew up. And both offers came from neighbors' families.
Oh,
Oh my
And
gosh.
the owners knew the one family better, it's the one that had a slightly better offer, we'll go with that. So,
Well, that's, yeah.
A spreadsheet, no, even though it's two offers, spreadsheet offer number one, offer number two, no names.
One thing we used to do, yeah,
That's
we would took
Uh-huh.
we took names.
Anything
and
identifying.
off, just did numbers, because for a while you had to have 12 or 15 of them.
Yeah.
We just put numbers, so there wasn't, it's like love letters and pictures and all this kind of stuff.
Take that crap
Throw all
out.
that stuff away, because that can be a problem.
Yeah.
But
But-
no, your scenario is a little different, because they made the choice for you,
Yeah.
just because they knew the family.
Yeah.
But if you were
That's a
just
tough one.
just a generic, like, hey, these are the offers we've got, and your client wanted to get the most they could get. You could go back to those two and say, hey, give us a solid offer. Or,
Yeah.
buy.
Did you guys know on multiple offers that you can counter everybody at the same time?
no,
There's a form, a multiple offer form where you can counter everybody at the same time. It doesn't mean you have to take anyone in particular, and the form actually says that. Give your highest and best. Or you can counter specifically. We could say,
oh,
we want 520. And those people accept it, and then you can accept an offer from that too.
hmm,
It's tricky, it's a fine line because you don't want to scare someone away, because some buyers, I don't want to give you to a bidding war. And we're like, okay, then you can have the leftover houses that.
Yeah.
And that's usually what we say. When we have a buyer, we say it in a really nice way, but we're like, multiple offer thing, a bidding war is kind of a good thing. It's a good house. People see that it's worth it. And I'm telling you, when we changed to telling people, you have to offer what you can offer, where you can wake up and if you didn't get it, you're okay. They're different. They write offers differently.
Hmm.
And we still do use escalation clauses. Sometimes I haven't used them in a while.
Right.
But I do like using them for a buyer, because then you can explain it to a buyer as, you'll know that you didn't have to pay more than you had to pay, because, and that's why I don't tell people what to offer, because let's say they get the house and they're in it, then they have that. Did I have to pay 510? What if I could have paid 5?
yeah,
What if she told me to pay more? Not that they think something bad about me, but gee, my agent told me to pay this, but maybe I should have only done this. I could have got, I don't want to be questioned. So I always tell them that. Same thing with listing a house. We don't typically tell them list at 5. We'll tell them a range. And we'll show them what else is on the market in their price point, and without being insulting. Let's say their house needs a lot of work. We'll say, okay, this one is move-in ready from what we can see on the pictures, and we're here. Where do you think we should be? And sometimes they're not reasonable. Sometimes, sometimes they're like, well, we think ours is okay.
I do all that in person.
Yeah, it's always in person,
So
always in person.
pretty. Sweet.
I might need to.
But we never
take you
tell
with
them.
Me to elicit, cause I have a guy that I've listed his home and it's just above market, but he's like, I don't have to sell it, I just wanna sell it.
Why
I don't
are you
have to."
selling?
He's out of town all the time, so it's just he had gone through a divorce, he makes buku bucks, and I've tried to say, hey, then sell it, use that money and like invest it or something, and he's just like,
Okay, here's what you do. This is my advice to somebody like that. It's frustrating, right? Because you're spending your time and your money marketing it. And you're like, does this guy even want to sell? But this is what we do. It depends on the price point. If it's a crazy price point, then all bets are off. But if I have 10 qualified showings, so that doesn't mean somebody coming in an open house. It means 10 other agents have brought these buyers through. I have to assume that they're qualified, and we don't have offers, and other houses in this price point are going under contract, then we're overpriced.
and I've told him that.
Yeah,
He's like,
so
well, then I'll just wait till next spring.
But then you're selling your neighbors' houses because you're listed too high, and they're seeing theirs as a better, like,
I
this.
see
It's so
Lexi's
frustrating.
house because I marketed the crap and door knocked that whole neighborhood and had this open house and.
Oh,
I
it's
was
so
just like,
frustrating.
"Welcome."
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
so-
it
it's so
was-
frustrating.
Person.
It's such a,
They
it's
are
a waste of your
motivation,
resources.
Yeah,
and if they're gonna be like legitimately that way,
Mhm.
I would tell them. waste your time and mine on putting this on the market until you're ready to sell the house.
And you
Because
could say
you're-
it's going to give his house, no, I'm gonna look in the history, right?
Mhm.
Next time it's listed,
It's a black market.
or now, and I'm gonna be like, oh, it was listed for blank and big days.
Yeah,
Nobody wanted it then, why, you know?
yeah. Oh,
But
I
he
did
doesn't
just
care.
see that. Yeah.
This guy
he does.
obviously doesn't care, so I don't know if he just wants you to come over because he likes talking to you. 'Cause that happens.
It does
That
happen.
happens.
I've had,
You've got these cool people that are lonely and they don't have anybody to talk to, and they're like, oh, it's on my house. All right, I'll go over and listen.
We had a guy do a list, had us over to do a listing appointment, he wanted to sell us insurance. He to this day has not listened. I'm like,
It was the weirdest thing.
it's the weirdest thing. Cause we used to have our trailer in
Yeah.
front of our house, so he called, he knew we were
So
realtors.
that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
that kind of person, because that's a waste. of
Weird.
time.
yeah,
Legitimately, it's a waste of your time and your, technically your fiduciary duty is to do your job, but you can't do your job. Pricing.
yeah.
It's hard. It's hard, especially when you're new. It's like you want to take every client you can possibly take. Like when we were new, we had this one buyer, we let them go, but we showed them house after house after house. And then they sent us an email and they said some, yeah, and the crazy thing, okay, so they sent us an email and they said, thank you for being patient with, it might take us 100 homes, but we will find the best one. No, it's not gonna take 100 homes. We were their after dinner hobby. They were like, let's go look at houses, we'll call Corinne Run. Yeah,
I had
cannot do it.
those, Yeah,
So we let them go. So here's the funny thing. We let them go. Really nice people, but let them go. About 3 years later, I was showing a house and I walked in and it was them. They were tenants. And they literally were like, Rhonda? And I was like, yeah. Like, yeah, you showed us houses. And I was like, they were tenants. And it was so frustrating because they
Yeah.
were military. And I'm like, you get this tax-free money you could have bought something for
Yeah.
3 years. And you rent
And
it.
at that time.
But thank God we let them go.
Yeah.
Oh, they would have bought it 150 and sold it 350, yeah, but we were like, we need everything we can get. We cannot take this.
yeah, my very first buyer, hard lesson learned,
Oh,
my very
large house.
first, showed her like 30 houses. I was okay with it just because I was learning the
Yeah.
market.
Yeah,
But it was one of those, I think I was just her BFF and she
Yes.
was from out of state and I think she wanted more and I'm just like. And I tried to keep bringing her back anyway.
Yeah.
But it was one of those, she let him go and I'm like, okay,
No.
that was a really hard lessons learned, but I'm getting a lot of hard lessons out of the way at the very beginning.
you have
so-
to. And it's not about, at the beginning, it's not about the commission, right? You're
Yeah.
gonna learn so much more from the experience that will pay off 100 times down the line, where one commission doesn't anything.
Yeah, because the amount of time you waste on
Uh-huh.
that person,
Oh, yeah.
right? Just imagine if you would have kept that person for 3 years.
100 homes.
Some agents will, I argue.
But- Somebody else might have.
You know how many
I don't
homes
know.
you just didn't get
Yeah.
because you were.
Well, and the other thing too is, so from that situation, we learned, here's a good book, if you guys like books, it's called Upstream. It basically says if you do something 2 or 3 times or something, a situation happens, get upstream of it so it doesn't happen again. And that's how you know, that's how you learn, right? Like you could sit in class every day, you're not gonna learn every circumstance, you're gonna figure it out as you go through yourself. So one of those things is when we meet with buyers, we tell them, you have the internet, you can look at them, you can get a feel for what you like. And once we narrow things down, usually 3 to 5 houses, and people find the right one. Throw that out there, that's in their head.
Yeah.
And when you're at 8 or 9, then you can say, hey, usually, I don't want to make you guys feel rushed, but I feel like we're off track. What are we missing here? Because normally people are, by the 5th house, they know, what are we missing? It's not a pressure thing. It's just kind of like letting them know that there is an end date. This is not, if we're showing 35 houses, we're not showing you the right house. Something's wrong.
I like your verbiage too of, okay, we're probably off track here,
Mhm.
like just trying to bring it back home and.
Because then you're not
obviously
rude to them,
focused.
right? You're not
Mhm.
saying, what are we doing?
Mhm.
You're just saying, and you can kind of put on yourself, hey, what am I missing? We're not seeing, well, it's just not the right floor plan. Okay, what do you mean? And that type of thing, trying to rein it in, because it's funny, sometimes people will be like, we go, and maybe you guys have gone through this in the other buyer class, but we go through what are your wants and what are your must-haves, right? And they always have, I have to have a garage. And then they show us the house without a garage. Yeah. But I really like the kitchen on that one. Okay, but remember, it doesn't have a garage. So if we go and see it and it doesn't have a garage, are you still gonna want it? Because otherwise you're wasting your time. They just wanna see the kitchen for some reason. Like it's funny. But when you just put that in their head and you just say, hey, normally people are 3 to 5. Or you just leave it like that. Okay, right?
All these little things that she's talking about are all negotiation.
Mhm.
People don't realize that with every conversation we have,
Mhm.
we're trying to get something. But that's position,
Mhm.
you're positioning your clients before you take your client out.
And the same thing with the seller. When you have a seller that doesn't want to drop the price and you know that you have to, when you tell them, if we have 10 qualified buyers walk through here and we don't have an offer, the market's telling us we're overpriced. I didn't make a mistake listing your price. You know, you don't say that, but you're
Mhm.
insinuating that, right?
Yeah.
The market's telling us for some reason, the buyers are finding the other houses. And what I do is if I've got, say, $500,000 house, right? And it's a 3-2, 2-car garage, I pull the others that are active around that, and if I can show those going under contract and theirs isn't, then I can reasonably assume that when they went out looking at houses, they saw ours and they saw that and they bought that instead. And I do that with the luxury houses too,
Mhm.
because we've got, those are really tough ones, because I can't tell a $2.3 million house. If we don't have 10 showings, you know, you
Yeah.
might not have 10 showings, but, I look at what else is around, and if nothing else, then I do a very big radius, because usually those people are not like, oh, I only want to be in this block, you know, I do. Like, we've got one up in Providence, I look at the whole county, I look at all of Cache County. And I say nothing has gone under contract above 2 in the last 6 months, so should you drop the price? No, it's not gonna do any good. So actually talk them out of a price drop, which is kind of funny, but. With sellers, you can kind of explain to them, you're helping, well, like, sometimes you can. We don't wanna sell your neighbor's house. Cause I don't get paid to sell your neighbor's house, and it doesn't help you to sell your neighbor's house, so let's make sure that we're priced properly, kind of go from that. But I don't think we ever tell somebody an exact listing price.
Very little.
Mhm. We tell them that, but it's really frustrating when you have one and you know you have to draw and they won't. So we try to preempt that. We have to say, hey, remember, we're at that 10. Or we haven't had a showing in 2 weeks and there's 3 other houses that have gone under contract. We need to do something. And the price drops too. Lee has a really good formula, and I cannot recall what it is off the top of my head right now, but basically, if it's a $500,000 house, don't drop it by 5 every 7 days. Because as a buyer, I'm just gonna sit and wait, right? I'm gonna be like, oh, every Friday they drop this.
He drops it.
This is what we tell our sellers too. We say, if they want a price on the high end, so you can absolutely do that. Just keep in mind that when we do a price drop, and Corey has like a little diagram that he draws where he explains this. He's like, our price drop now has to cover where we should have been and go under that, so your price drop has to be big.
And
Are you gonna
then.
draw it?
I can draw it, I don't know what time is this, don't, are we over?
You
Oh,
can be over
7:30?
now. Some
7:30.
people do it 7, but I think it's
Some people
technically
debate.
till. Some debate. You can be here as long as you want.
Sorry, I don't know. Corey will draw it. He's not an artist, but he's good at this.
I am.
Wait, I think you have to keep those up. Just kidding. I don't know.
I think they already did it,
This
cause
one
it's not, it's our team meeting,
That's-
Oh, yeah.
and he's already
Oh,
done
okay.
this minutes.
Watson needs to-
I don't wanna get in trouble. But those are new, like, not new, those are strategies of things to tell people ahead of time, because if you just list a seller. And you don't say anything about possibly dropping or how you analyze things or whatever, then when you say we have to drop the price, they're like, what? What? But if you tell them ahead of time, hey, remember, we haven't got that 10 showings, this is where we're at. There was an agent, you're not allowed to do this anymore. In his listing agreement, he had dates and to what they were dropping the price to already in his. listing.
Oh,
They were
really?
dropping the price and the people were like, I just looked on the MLS, my house is 20,000 less, what happened?
Oh, yeah.
I can't do that. It's not a genius, but
Good example wasn't, because it didn't fully explain the process.
he's like, they signed it, I don't know, you can't do this. That's funny.
Okay, so I just get this ready, I draw it, so this access is time, this is excitement. Right, so if this is day 1 of a listing, That's the most exciting day for a listing. It's the most exciting day in its life. It's being published to all the websites, all the different places. Everybody's looking at it. Everybody's all excited. How many days? This is from NAR, so it's over thousands of transactions. Do you think it's on the market before it dips and kind of levels off?
Oh, yeah, you asked the sellers this. I love
Probably
this.
what, 3? I mean, 3 to 5?
3.
I'd say at least 10.
7.
It's 31.
Oh, really?
I know, you
It
would
take
One
way
day
longer
is-
than I
I
thought.
know.
This is because you take all the transactions. So it's just, it's about a month, it's 31 days. And you're like, okay, so that's a significant day. Right? And the question I asked before I even start any of this is, the million dollar question.
Oh, we haven't gone over that yet. It's my favorite thing.
Remember we talked about positioning and we talked
Yes.
about, like I said, part of negotiating is knowing not only your product, but who you're going against. So we asked them, before I start this
Can't believe
part, I
that's
asked, it's called $1 million question. If you were on a game show, you're gonna win $1 million. How much do you think realistically your home would sell?
And you have to say it just like that,
You gotta say
realistically.
realistically. Do you
Like
think
your game
home would
show
sell?
meetings are based
Be,
off.
yes,
your-
because a
selling your
seller
house.
wants a million.
Yes,
It's
Now you've
not
got
like that.
that mindset of,
Okay.
I wanna win, I wanna get the right answer, I want, that kind of thing. So then they'll tell you because they've been researching, right? But it gives you an idea of how crazy are the
Crazy?
people that I'm sitting at this listing appointment.
We asked that before we bring out a CMA. They never know. And we even tell them, our CMA's here, our numbers don't change. What do you think it is? Right?
About probably 75% of the time, I don't even have to take my seat.
We never show them the CMA.
I don't take it out. But
Isn't that crazy?
so that question starts, I know kind of what I'm dealing with. Are we near each other? Are we not, or whatever? But so then this illustration helps with however the answer. So if this is day 1. And it's 31 days on market. Obviously. About half of that, so we're talking about, this is about day 14 right here. Or about 2 weekends, barring any kind of holidays. So if you go on the market, we're going on what you want to do as the high end. Do you want to talk about that here, right? Where we're 14 days in, and then I tell them our formula. We have a formula that's been proven. If you have 10 showings and you don't have an offer, that's the market telling you that you probably need to adjust. If you have more showings than that, then obviously that's the case. And then, so then I show them this and I say, all right, so this is day 1, now day 14, we've gotten to here. Would you rather adjust price by, and let's just use a $500,000 home, by 10 or 15,000 here? This doesn't, right? Here, or would you rather wait till you get out here and now you gotta adjust by 30 or 40,000? And you've wasted however many months on.
We're like, not that one.
And so most people are like, well, I don't wanna do that. I wanna do this. And then now they're tuned in where they're like, all right, how are we gonna come to that conclusion? Okay, I'm gonna call you every Friday at least. Give you update on what's happening, what the showings were saying, what kind of feedback we have. In addition to that, we keep track of all of your impressions and your clicks and all the things on the backside. So we can talk about how many people actually looked at it, all that kind of data. And we'll talk about that, and then we'll have a serious conversation here. We'd rather adjust here than we would over here. And they'll say yes. And so I keep this in their folder.
This is years. You know how we used to do it? How you're taught. Here's a CMA. Your house should be 5 months. We never did it. We were not like that, but kind of in a way, yes, right? Like, that's how we're taught. We're like, bring a CMA to show the CMA. Yes, I agree, but no. Like, you should know your numbers. You should know. One thing I learned years ago is, you know how you do a CMA and if it's a Rambler, you're only looking at Ramblers, right? How you should. Look at every single house. I don't care what it is because the sellers know and they don't know, oh, a comp should only be a Rambler. Because this has happened to us before. We've been to the house and they're like, yeah, but my neighbor, and it's a 2-story. My neighbors went for this. And we're like, because does it matter? Yes, to the seller, because at least I can explain that house has 700 more square feet than yours has, and it has this, and I can explain to them, but I don't want to be caught there not knowing. So I don't do a CMA of everything, but in my head, I don't print it out, I should say. in my head, I do it. And the way that we set things up now, Corey does the listing stuff and I do all the preparation for it. So he's like out the door and I'm like yelling to him, the one across the street, blah, blah, blah. Like, I want to make sure he knows everything because it's not related to their house. Like, he might be going to a 1920 house and this one's a 1950. You wouldn't pull it up in a CMA, but I want him to know because the seller is gonna know. The other thing too, I don't understand why people lie. And they'll be like, my neighbor's house sold for this. And I'm like, pulling out my ML and I'm like, no, it didn't. Why is your neighbor
That's-
lying to you?
that's Majority of the time, that's when I actually.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the actual price. Really?
Why did he tell me that? It happens so often. And we've been caught by that a couple times where I was like, wait, what? And then one time I think even during there, I like, you had your iPad, so I was like, look that one up.
I'll pull it. If there's something crazy happens, we'll be like, all right, well, let's pull it up. Pull it up. Click on something and then, oh. Yes, but
Why did your neighbor lie? I have no idea, but
it's weird.
they
but
do.
This little thing has helped me out a lot. Puts something in front of them. Even your analyzers, they get some data off of that, so they like to see that kind of thing. So it can help a lot during,
Mhm.
and it breaks up. You know, there's always a little bit of tension in a listing appointment or something like that. So if you're not a comedian, then you gotta have some ways to break everything up. They wanna see your personality, but they also want the most money. So to get the most money for you, we wanna price it appropriately, right? Come right out the gate and price it appropriately. And then secondly, if we do go too high according to the market, we need to adjust it quickly. Then get in the ballpark so we can get you in the.
And unless it's ridiculous, you can almost never price a house too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's going to get,
I'll ask people that. Do you- how do
because
you-
you'll
do you
get
think you
multiple
price-
offers, is that why?
and you
Yeah, I'll
know,
ask them a question. If they're really pressing some of this, I'll be like, well, do you think you can overprice it? No. Explain why you can't, because all of this, right? You're gonna delay, you're gonna waste time, you're gonna end up paying that price. Do you think you can underprice it? Well, yeah. You know, you can. And then I'll explain that to through questions. Okay, so if you saw this house that you were looking for and it was priced $100,000 below what you think it should be priced, would you want to go see it? Yeah. Okay, and do you think everyone would want to go see that house? Yeah. Okay, so how many offers do you think they're gonna get? And then it starts to sink in, you ask the question. Yeah, it's going to build back up and go maybe even over. Because we'll also talk about pricing strategy. Maybe this pricing a little bit lower. Well, my neighbor priced at this, great. So why don't we price a little bit lower? Let their house sell your house, and you might even get multiple offers and get more than what they'll get anyways. And anyways, you can have these kind of conversations and talk through all this kind of.
you just kind of
Question.
learn the things that happen.
Yeah. You said that your data point is if you have 10 showings
Mhm.
without an offer, that's an indication that
Mhm.
you're priced too high.
Mhm.
Like after how many days?
Yeah,
Does it depend on the market?
there used to be a guideline, yes, there used to be a guideline, they used to say 10 showings or 2 weeks without an offer. So the 10 could be, pretty much any time, but if you go 2 weeks, but it kind of, there's a caveat to that, because it kind of depends. I'm always in the MLS looking at what else is going on, right? So if I see no other houses are selling either, I'm not freaking out as much, but if everybody else is going under contract, and I look at a big radius, because it's not like a buyer, most buyers are not like appraisers, right? They're not like, oh, I have to stay within a mile radius and this year, like, they're just looking. So I try to really cast a wide net. Like I said, if someone's looking in Clinton, I might look at, north of Layton and look at everything in that price point and just see what else is coming off the market.
Yeah, so in
So
other words. if
it's
something's
hard to
moving,
say, then I don't worry.
Then we can extend that a little bit. Or it sounds funny, weather affected too, you get snowstorm in the winter time or something like that, we'll extend that a little bit. Or holidays,
Okay.
so a little bit of common sense goes into that, but.
Yeah,
But that's a good estimate, right? And that's something that you can put down, really talk through with your at the table. Because a lot of times you're this first time you met these people, they don't know who the heck you are. You're really kind of trying to break through barriers and get a listing agreement signed, right? That's the whole goal. Either leave in handcuffs or you have a smile on your face. Well,
I see like on Life 360, I'll be like, he is at this listing agreement, but like, it'll show your little circle is in the backyard. I'm like, did they kill him? Like,
Oh.
why? He's in their backyard. And he's like, no, because one time you were there forever. You didn't get home till like 9:30 or 10 at night. I literally was like, what is going on? Oh my gosh, he's there forever. And then finally she says, well, my brother is so-and-so. Her brother's an agent we know. We're like, Corey goes, why am I here? Like,
Yeah, I was kind of frustrated. That was weird. She didn't trust her brother. Wanted her brother to sell the house, find out, but she didn't trust him. It was pricey. So
Wasting your time.
so she wouldn't,
I wouldn't tell
and
you
so
that.
Corey kept
So I
explaining.
was like, she kept saying, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That's great. That's great. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you go? 1 being, you're crazy, please get out of here. 10, like, hey, we should have already sold this house together. Where are you on that scale? She's like, oh, you're an 8. An 8?
And
Like, I'm only a 10 on payday. How are you not signing this? And she's like, well, finally it came down. She's like, well,
So it's
I
like,
went, they say it was 5.
kidding?
I was like 10. I was like, this is. And anyways, then she finally admitted that.
and it's an
"Oh, you know
agent.
So-and-so, I'm like, why, what am I doing? I go
Okay,
back,
here's
I
the
grab
funny
my
thing.
stuff.
I won't say, I won't say the person's name. We really like him. I won't say the person's name, but back when we started, the market wasn't that great, but we were like super motivated. We're like, we have to make this thing work. We had other careers, you know, it's like, you know how it is. We need to make this thing work. So these agents were in our office at the time and they had a bunch of short sales and they were sending us their crap leads. I mean, I'm talking, I didn't even want to walk in these houses. I could smell dog from my car.
Get the cooties.
Yes,
as you
I'm
walk
like,
out.
and these things were priced at 125, 130. Okay, so it's back 2012. We were writing offers for 300,000 and 400,000 for these people, and these agents were like, and they're getting referrals left and right. And they were like very well regarded, very good agents. They're like, who are these people? Corey will call somebody until they're like, F you, F this. He's like, I'll call them back tomorrow when they settle down a little bit. I'm serious. I couldn't even believe it. But anyway, we didn't know. We still worked full time. We were both on base. We didn't really realize we were doing well. And then finally these guys were like, we kind of want to meet you. Cause they were just texting us, these ladies, hey, call this person. And we're like, okay. And then we sell them a house and they called on $125,000 short sale. That's not like happy. They're,
At the beginning too, they were like, well, we're gonna have another agent that we're gonna send.
oh yeah, that's right. They wanted us to
Sure,
compete.
that's called. I didn't lose any of these. I was on that thing in like 3 seconds. And
Really
they were
cool.
like, they called us in, we met it. All right, we're not sending to anybody else anymore, but what do you guys do?
Yeah, they're like, can you guys tell us what we're doing or what you're doing? We're brand new. We had no clue what was going on. We're like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? We show them the Cappy house. They don't like it. So we show them another house and then they like it. We write an offer. They're like, but anyway, we really like them because they really helped us and they had no idea, but they really helped us.
And they're good.
They're just really good guys. Yeah. So when she said, do you know so-and-so? Corey's like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me.
I texted them. Hey, I just met your sister.
There's 4 hours of my life. I'll
Yeah.
never get back.
I seriously was like, he's either dead or what is happening
Oh
over
my
there?
gosh.
What is happening? But you kind of learn things as you go through and then you change your process.
Yeah.
Right? Like we know another team in the state, really, probably maybe the biggest team in the state. I don't really know. The guys, they used to go to listing agreements or listing appointments. Here's the last thing that I'll say. They used to go to listing appointments and say, okay, our assistant will send you the paperwork tomorrow and walk out of there. Corey will not leave unless they sign, because how many people are going to change their mind? You don't wait
Yeah.
just because you don't like doing paperwork.
No, someone else can say.
Right.
they
and
talk to
because
more than one.
You go in. And they're like, oh, I'll have my assistant send it over to you tomorrow, and then I get in touch with them, I go over there, and guess who's getting this?
Yeah.
Hey, never mind your assistant, I got it, but you can bring a fire.
Hey, here's the last thing I'm gonna say. Like, it's fine if you're a team, like you don't do paperwork, right? You just don't like it or,
I've never just engaged with it.
Okay.
so.
cause like Corey can do it. Like when we first started, you got your license first. He can do it.
I
He
can do it, and
doesn't
I
like
train
it.
people.
Yeah.
Knowing how to do it is extreme.
He doesn't have a login. I'll tell you the truth. You can't get into command, can you? He doesn't have a login.
Want to.
You don't have to, no.
He'll come home and just throw an MLS sheet, write it up. I'm like, okay. So the only reason I say that, which is fine, if you've got a business partner that does the paperwork, great. But if you're, oh, I forgot to ask, are you guys single agents?
Yes.
Single agents? Okay, so this is my opinion, but I will back it up with like concrete reasons for it. Know how to do the paperwork. I don't care if you hire a transaction coordinator, go for it. Everyone talks about leverage. I get it. But when you're brand new and maybe you're doing one deal a month or whatever, you don't need a transaction coordinator. You need to know how to do the paperwork. So this has happened several times. Where, do you have any offers? I'm a listing agent. Do you have any offers? Yes, I have one. I'm meeting with the sellers tomorrow at 3. Okay, my transactional coordinator's out right now. She's gonna send you the paperwork tomorrow. I never get the offer. They don't know how to do it.
Or they get the offer way late, someone else is already in it.
Yes, or I need an addendum. They send it to me and I say, or I counter them. Their transaction coordinators out of the office, they don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Know how to do it. I hire somebody if you want, but I would probably do, I don't really know how many transactions, I would say maybe 10, 15, 20 on your own. So that you know how to do it.
Yeah,
And that way you-
Christy told me, Christy Vale is.
Good.
And she's like, Melissa,
Good.
you need to do coming out the gate,
Yes.
just do it. She said,
Yes.
you have to know the paperwork, she's
So much.
over at like emphasize,
Yes.
read the documents, understand it. Learn how to give a summary for every single paragraph.
Yep.
You need to know it like the back of your hand, and that's
100%.
been great because it was hard and it was a challenge at first,
Yep.
learning how to do it all, but I would
You have
absolutely
to.
agree.
First thing I tell you, is memorize the rep sheet, memorize the listing agreement, and memorize the buyer agency.
And guess what's on his nightstand? And I'm not joking. Copies of all this stuff. Are you serious?
I read.
The code of
all the
ethics is on his
Oh,
I have
nightstand.
the code of ethics, I have a listing agreement, I keep them updated, buyer agreement, and rep sheet on my nightstand. I use all the time. I can
When he
tell you
doesn't sleep, he just-
paragraph and page and whatever on things, because here's why.
it comes
I
up
believe that
so
you
many
should know that,
times.
as a professional, you should do that anyway, but I don't even know how many times we have either gotten deals or saved things for our clients because we knew the contract.
How about
This sounds crazy,
Yes, no,
all the
because you
time?
think
yes.
contract is the most important thing,
Mhm.
but people don't know the contract at all, and they ask.
How about this?
ask Dumb questions, or for example, the listing.
The South Jordan one. Remember that one? It was listed with someone else. It
Oh,
expired. So we
So
took
they
the
were-
listing and the person, one of the people that saw it before came back and literally offered us on the first day we had it listed. So the agent says, that's mine. Because it was listed when, or I showed it when I was listed. It wasn't his buyer, but he had it listed. And Corey's like, read the contract.
Well, yeah,
Until it's
he-
listed with
he got-
another agent, that person,
He got snippy with me, so I said, all right, are you sitting at your computer? He said, yes.
and he had already talked
I
to his
said,
broker.
Pull up a listing agreement, or the one that you had signed with them if you want. He's like, okay, I said, read section 2, such and such, and I told her, to read. And he read it. It's like, oh. I said, well, have a nice day.
Because everybody reads that and they're like, the protection period, read what it says. It doesn't say forever. It doesn't say if Mark Smith shows this house, then he gets it forever.
Well,
You
it
know,
automatically is gone. as soon as
the
they
second they sign with a new agent.
So. Anyways, I say that, and we're keeping you guys.
His broker didn't even know that though. That was the thing. He's like, no, my broker said,
Trying to argue
your broker's
everything
wrong.
else, it was like, yeah, take the contract out, look at the contract, walk you right through it. But you gotta know that stuff. It'll help you in your negotiations, because you know your product, and to ask what to talk about. And when someone tries to throw something at you, because sometimes people will know a little part,
They say it
it's
wrong.
kind of like the Bible.
Yep.
Pull a verse out and kind of make it mean whatever you want it to mean. Read the whole chapter or put other stuff with it. All of a sudden, oh, that's not really what that means, right? It's the same thing with the Repsy and all the different things. You know, you're confidently walking for your clients versus someone else trying to buffalo you or tell you something false or something.
The first thing to memorize, my opinion, is section 1 of the rep sheet. Where it says what's all included. Read through that. That'll help you so many times that you'll read it and be like, that's so easy. No, you will read it and something will happen. And be like, oh,
Yeah, it's hilarious. Somebody said, oh, hey, I've been an agent for 20 years. Well, you
Have
learn
you
how to read.
have
So
you read it?
You'll run into all kinds of stuff.
Weird things happen. We had one with John where he had a buyer and then he called me, he goes, oh my gosh, they had a dump truck go to the house and it ripped up the sidewalk. What do we do? I'm like, well, look at the rep sheet. What does section 1 say? It's supposed to be in the same condition as when you showed the property.
Yeah.
Cause the agent was like, well, we don't have to do it. You know, you didn't buy the sidewalk or whatever. The listing agent was saying, yeah, we kind of did.
Yeah.
So I took a picture of it and I highlighted it, sent it to him and he texted it to the agent. He goes, oh, they're gonna fix it. those are the kind of things, yeah, you just need. But anyway. Once I start talking, I start talking.
Hey, it was good.
That was great. I
Oh,
always
and
love
love
it. There's so much to learn
So
and I don't know how
much.
many times you can hear it over and over, but it's such great information and I love that they offer this training for us.
It's so good, and I always wanna make sure that I say things that are my opinion, things that are like set in stone. Right, cause I think some agents are like, oh, you should do this, no, not necessarily, you do whatever fits you, but if you know why, then you can tailor it to. You know, whatever, whatever, but I'm glad you guys came, because I was like, I have to only talk to people on Zoom.
Yeah.
That's happened before.
I,
I'm like, hey. I don't know. So it's so much better in person.
So
So
you
much.
guys know how we put up like helmets or profiles?
Yes,
I don't know
so
what's going on.
there's helmets up there on the table. If you decorate it, so up on the side there, it's got the instructions, so you get yardage for certain things, including coloring your football helmet
Okay.
and attending the class.
Oh, you get stuff for that?
Yeah, yardage, and then if you hit a touchdown, you get prizes.
Okay. And
We lost the volume on.
I'm so
Yeah, it was
sorry.
I think it's last week.
Yeah, that's a cute little game.
But people aren't really keeping up with it.
But I don't really know what's going on. We were in one of the, what was the, contest they did earlier this year. We didn't even know we were in it and we were separate teams. Seriously? Your closing, I'm like, was that yours? Was that mine? You did the same. I'm like,
Sean's super into this one.
is he
He
really?
wants people
Oh,
to be,
yeah.
be involved. It's like, there should be like 50 helmets like here.
Yeah, he's pretty disappointed that there's not.
He did a video last Tuesday.
So the attending an Ignite,
I think it's in this next one
Oh,
down.
no, it's.
And,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't see it.
hey, Corey, I think that, have you talked to either of those?
Oh, yeah,
We'll
graduation.
put them tomorrow.
Come to.
We'll see.
Both of them, or
No, the one that's kind of, the other guy's kind of hard to get.
is it the 100 unit one? Is the
Yeah.
harder to get a hold of?
So,
The other guy was like.
yes,
Super.
one used at once like 30 acres.
Yeah.
I talked to him. I talked to him, yes.
Yeah.
They told him, hey, I can read. Tell me what you really need. And he was gonna talk to some people.
Yeah,